Welcome to The Hollywood Outsider, an award-winning weekly entertainment podcast available on your favorite podcast app or at thehollywoodoutsider.com, where you can find many in-depth reviews of the titles we're about to talk about. This is our annual South by Southwest episode where we dive into one of the largest film festivals in the world, live in person for the first time in a couple years, complete with reviews of over 25 film and episodic world premieres, including The Lost City, Bodies, 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 Halo, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, snippets directly from South by, including an interview with Tony Hawk himself, more than a few surprises, and a whole lot more. Let's get on with the show. My name is Aaron Peterson, and also here with me today is Amanda Sink.
Hello, hello.
Hey, today we are going to talk exclusively about the South by Southwest Film Festival, or South by as it is commonly known, what the festival is, how it works, and especially what movies we saw that you should keep an eye out for. This is the 2022 South by Southwest Film Festival.
Yeah, after 3 years, we've finally returned to in-person, which was very exciting.
It was so exciting. I'm so excited.
South by Southwest is one of the largest festivals in the country, if you didn't know, encompassing film, music, and interactive media. We're only going to be talking about the film festival portion because that's what matters most to us. And it showcases just about every type of film you could imagine. They don't focus on just one genre, which I really love, and I know Aaron enjoys that too, so you get a good blend of all types of film, and even episodics, which they introduced a number of years ago. They also offer keynote speakers, special sessions, panels, and lots of parties in the industry. There's even a trade show when it is live. And this year, thankfully, it was in a hybrid. So we did get to go in person, but there are others who attended virtually, and hoorah for them, but more hoorah for us.
Well, even if you attended in person, you still had a virtual component if you wanted it, which was really exciting. So let's get into it. In terms of how South by was this year, I can't tell you, we've talked about this festival for near a decade now, and the last 2 years have been online only, and I thought it was very important that we still support the festival because it's a great component to independent film and what film has to offer, and episodics now, and now we actually have that. Oh my God, it's so exciting to actually have that back, though, to have it back in person, to actually to be in line with people and have conversations with people and go to gatherings. And also, it's very safe. They required vaccinations or constant testing, which they provided on site. So, it also felt if you were hesitant or reluctant or concerned in that respect, they had you covered there too. So, it was really well orchestrated across the board. It was so good to be back in person and see movies with a crowd and laughter and screaming and yelling and scared and terrifying, and Nick Cage being all cagey. It's great. There
was lots of cageness happening, but I also really enjoy, and I'm sure you have the same feeling, the same sentiment, is that seeing the filmmakers be really excited to show their premiere, their film or episodic in front of a large group, even though we are kind of small in the scheme of things. For some of these directors or producers or actors, it's large for them. It's huge for them. It's their first one or whatever. And so that makes a big difference in seeing our reaction and then us seeing their reaction. It makes a big difference, in my opinion.
Oh, it makes a huge difference. And I think sometimes when you talk about the festival and you mention, there are filmmakers there. There's Sandra Bullock and Daniel Radcliffe. Let me just pick these names up. It's not, while that is cool, that is a very exciting attribute that you get to explain to people. Like Amanda interviewed Tony Hawk. You're going to hear that interview or parts of that interview.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, easy killer. And she was so stoked. But in the same token, you also see filmmakers that are on the rise, up and comers. You see people who are not quite there yet. Alex Garland, when he brought Ex Machina there, he was still kind of an up and comer, and now he's seen as a wonderful filmmaker. There are a lot of opportunities at the festival to interact and see filmmakers on the rise. It's not just the ones it's the ones you're gonna know, which I absolutely love that idea. Same with actors. It's filmmakers across the board. Actors, actresses, crew members, directors, whatever, writers across the board. Everybody is there to support filmdom, creating the arts, and as well as all of the experiences that are there. I mean, you have virtual reality, you have the trade shows where they kind of showcase possible technologies. You have political panels. There are so many things. Okay, so before we get through what movies or events we saw and our takeaways on them, take us through what the festival is and why it's so huge from a fan's perspective and why they should go next year when it's live again, hopefully, because they weren't sure. I think they were right up to the wire on this one. I mean, Sundance had to close before it started. South by was keeping their options open, and thankfully it worked out. So live next year, I hope. Why should people go?
Well, and to your point, they worked very closely with the city of Austin and the public health officials. So it wasn't like they were just making these decisions on their own as an organization. They did get input from those medical professionals who actually know what they're doing regards to this stuff. So that part was kind of nice, even if you're not entirely concerned about COVID, just to know that they were taking appropriate steps is huge. But from a fan's perspective, Aaron kind of already touched on where you get to see the big name celebrities, and all of that is really, really cool. You know, there's moments where you're going to see somebody that you never dreamed of seeing in person, Tony Hawk. But then there are other moments where you're like, I don't even know this person, but that's cool. And I remember one of my moments was between Jenna Ortega and Natalie from Yes, God, Yes. And just seeing those actors kind of come to the rise years later and all of that is really cool. That's a fun part of it. But it's also the community. Like, people are not actively fangirling over these celebrities for the most part. There's a few of them who will do it more so on the street. But when you're sitting in the film screening or the episodic premiere or whatever, and you have Rosario Dawson sitting 2 rows behind you, people are not clamoring to her for photos or taking pictures of Sandra Bullock the whole time, or, you know, just doing anything that's really invasive or uncomfortable. They're all there to watch the same thing and just get excited for these celebrities and actors and filmmakers who are just making art. And that's kind of how they feel about it. So that part's really neat, that they're just sitting amongst you and you get to just feel like they're normal people and you're just part of the normal people community. That part is really exciting.
It's a level of respect.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in the theaters. It's
not like paparazzi. I mean, outside sometimes, yes, but
for sure.
Yeah. But typically inside in the theater, it's relatively calm. It's just seeing a movie with a large crowd, and, you know, the actors or the filmmakers just happen to be there. So it's much more low key, respectful, fun, exciting, and everything else. But it's not crazy, and it's not people like, oh, look, and they write their name on there, Sandra on their chest or something. I mean, it's much more low key.
Sign my butt cheeks. No, it's not any of that. It is really cool also because when you go to these festivals and you try out something that you don't really know anything about, you don't know any of the cast or the crew, and you go to see this movie, presumably more so than not, it's probably going to be a movie, and you find something that really spoke to you. You find something that's new, you find someone new, you find a unique story.
Every time.
You find a unique filmmaking technology or something like that they've used. A lot of drones, when those got introduced, I remember seeing a lot of them introduced into South by Southwest Film Festival, stuff like that. That's really cool, where you get to see stuff that there's a lot of those small ones that are never going to get distribution, unfortunately, which is like the sad part. They might get distribution, but you don't know that for sure on a lot of these movies unless they're already a big blockbuster that's secured distribution.
Yeah, some of them might be secured after the festival, but some of them, you know, I've come across movies that I thought were great, and they don't come out for 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's sad because there's a lot of good films. There was only one movie that I would even teeter on calling bad that I saw at the whole festival. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty good range when you're watching as many movies as we have. You know, I mean, that's
definitely
pretty exciting. And okay is even good. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, because, you know, there's so many chances that are being taken at a festival. sometimes you don't know. And thank God, South by Southwest doesn't have just coming-of-age movies. They have a lot of different
I
stuff.
love those, but I understand they're not for everyone, and you don't want an entire festival dedicated to. I mean, there is a festival that's dedicated to it, but
I love those too. But how many ages can we come up? You know, sometimes it's just like, haven't we aged at this point?
Don't we know how ages work?
Can we watch people get killed as they've come to age now? Can we watch people go on an adventure? You know, and all kinds of stuff.
That's another thing, is that they bring in a lot of genre films, including horrors. And so a lot of film festivals are a little bit resistant to bringing in horrors, or they bring in something that's more just a thriller and they call it a horror. The South by Southwest Film Festival really has so much range in what they've procured.
It drives me nuts that horror isn't considered art by some people. I'm like, you know how hard it is to scare people? It is hard. In this cynical world, it is very difficult.
And spoiler alert, there was a movie that actually made Aaron jump, which never happens. Never happens. Yeah. I was just like, I had to tell the director, like, I just want you to know that this man that I went to see this movie with I've never seen him jump in a horror movie before. It may have just been an off day. I don't know. I didn't tell him that, but he did jump. So I feel like that is something you should know. And he was like, wow, that's a pretty big compliment. Thanks.
Yeah, I saw the guy and just kept walking because I didn't want my shame to show. That I couldn't keep it together. But well done. Well done, guy. We'll talk about it when we get there.
Well, we kind of started talking about securing distribution, but for those who haven't listened to previous South by Southwest episodes, South by is known for showcasing and premiering films long before they even secure distribution. So how does that process work? Okay,
and we should say it's SXSW.com if you want to go to the website, SXSW.com. For whatever reason, it's really hard to say that 3 times real fast, but what are you going to do? So the South by Southwest Festival happens every March in the heart of Austin, Texas. It showcases feature films, shorts, documentaries, episodic premieres, virtual reality projects, panels with your favorite filmmakers, influencers, and political advocates. Literally has everything possible you could potentially want. Now, on a normal year, you arrive, you check in, you grab your badge, then you assemble your spreadsheet of planned events. And trust me, spreadsheet's handy, but their app actually is great. You can actually keep track of everything on the app now. It's way different than it was years ago. Years ago, I literally had a spreadsheet and had no idea what I was doing from day to day. So I ended up randomly all over the place. Films, panels, keynote speeches, the virtual reality simulations, parties. There's a lot to do at South by. But don't sweat it if you can't get into a movie or a panel, because there's always literally something else going on. And oftentimes better than whatever you were planning on to do anyway. I can't tell you how many fantastic movies I've wandered into because I couldn't get into something else, and I liked it so much better. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that happens at South by. You find really, really original, creative, great content. And this year I thought was a wonderful festival. And they've really kind of upped episodics this year. Because TV is becoming very, very important to storytelling, they brought some really good television shows here, which I was kind of surprised by, because typically it's always been film and only a handful of episodics. This year is a lot. And this year was the first time since 2019 that it was live and in person. That felt good. It's weird to say that it felt good to wait in a line, but it really did. It really did. To have conversations with people again and talk about the things they've seen, get ideas or recommendations that I never even would have considered, because you have someone telling you, well, you should give this a chance. And it's a stranger, but you become friends before it's all over. It's just, it's a weird combination of wonderful things that really works out. It's like a film lover's dream. And waiting in line is never a problem because it's always kind of fun.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. So, and I'm an introvert, so.
Yeah, and it even works from that respect, and they do take it seriously if you're on your phone or you're talking during the movie. I mean, yes, you'll see a few people here and there where the light glows up, their freaking lightsaber pops up, and you'll see security coming to the area like, don't do it. Don't do it.
Ooh, I heard one guy get real mad with somebody because I think they were preparing to record the Q&A after, but they were still recording like the end part of the movie or something. I think you were in that screening with me. And I just heard security go, "Hey, you can't record in here."
Yeah.
And I was like, whoo, his voice is intimidating. He made me want to drop my stuff and I'm not even holding anything.
Didn't even see the guy, but there was enough there to know I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's what happens. And honestly, I'm okay with tackling people. If you take out your phone during a movie, tackle them. Fine with that.
So I have a question for you. Okay. In years past, especially for the larger properties, there's usually been a bit of a buffer between our South by screenings and the release date to the general public, if you will. But this year, I noticed that there was a good portion, obviously not all of them, but more so than I noticed in years past, of films and TV shows premiering globally or nationwide within 1 to 2 weeks of the festival. What are your thoughts and feelings on that?
I think it's, I mean, there are a handful. I think it's more like 3 weeks to a month or something out, but I see your point, because a lot of times
there's like 4 of them that were like within a week, and I was like, whoa, man.
Well, I don't know if you can count fingers on your hand, but on my hand, that's a handful. So that's less than 5. That's what I'm saying. Yes, but more so than usual, for sure. I mean, there are, DMZ was there and it was out, by the time we got back, which was crazy because that never happens at South by. I think a lot of that has to do with the whole pandemic situation. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, they probably were just taking what they could, because probably a lot of major movies don't want to premiere there if they weren't sure that it was going to be in person. Would probably, and I think there was still, even though they were planning for it, with everything that went on a month and a half ago, even, that wasn't that long ago. They were probably just concerned. I think studios were probably concerned and whatnot. So maybe they were just trying to fill slots. I don't know the answer. I'm just saying that's the only thing I could really think might be the reason for that to happen. But it doesn't bother me at all. It was different. And I still saw a lot of stuff that isn't coming out for a long time and that doesn't have distribution yet. So, I mean, I still felt like it's still South by Southwest, but I did kind of get that vibe that we might have had to take stuff that's coming out sooner than we had planned just because we need to fill some slots. Is that your take on it, or do you feel differently? Yeah,
I mean, it definitely, and I don't know the reasons behind it, but it definitely felt like there were more so, and you've done this for many more years than I have. I've only done 1 other year in person and then 2 years virtual. But in the years that I've done it, it just feels like there's more of a lag time between even the big blockbuster type movies, because there's always a couple of those big ones.
You only did 1 year live, right?
1 year live, 2 year virtual. Well, technically 2 now, if you include this year. 2 live, 2 virtual. But you've done a large number over the years for the past like 7 or 8 years or something that you've been to South by. In my perspective, it just felt like, wow, there's a lot that's coming out pretty quickly. I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once, X, DMZ, We Crashed, Shining Girls. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that's coming out pretty quick following the festival, which is less usual than the norm.
Yeah.
But I agree, it's probably because of the pandemic, and that's got to be a factor.
It is. It ruins everything fun, right? Sorry. It very much felt like that to me. There's still a ton. I mean, Shining Girls doesn't come out to like the end of April. There were some especially the episodics that were coming out rather quickly. And then you had Lost City, which they usually have a blockbuster that's coming out rather quickly. So, I mean, that would be that one. X was kind of a surprise because that came out almost the same, shortly before the movie came out.
It was like a week before.
Yeah, it was a week, which that there's usually a little bit more of a buffer, but it's also bringing attention to the festival, and that's always good. So, yeah, I mean, it's abnormal, but I also just kind of chop it up to they probably didn't. A lot of studios that would put the major headliners there, I'm sure, probably were leery that maybe it'll get canceled.
That's fair.
I think everybody going.
I think South by was even worried.
I think everybody was. I know. I was like, looking at numbers every day, just like, I wonder if that's. Because you don't want to say something's good, obviously, with what that situation is. But in the same token, you know what's going to be a little more concerning than others in terms of the number of cases and whatnot. So people were keeping an eye on that for sure. Oof. But let's talk about movies. We were able to see a lot of movies at the festival, over 25 films and episodics. So we are going to talk about that as well as a couple of experiences at the festival. What we are going to do is give a quick synopsis of each film, and then myself and Amanda will kind of share our brief thoughts on the film and what our final score is. Remember, if you've never listened to our podcast, we rate every film on if $10 is the full price of admission, what is the score? There you go. And we will have a few surprises along the way, including an interview with Tony Hawk, maybe some excerpts from panels and stuff and whatnot. There might be some surprises. So stay tuned. We're kind of going to provide you with a taste of the experience of being at South by. Now, we're not going to go in any particular order, and there will be kind of our mini awards of what we love most at the very end. Are you ready?
Indeed.
Okay, let's start with Sissy. Invited away on a bachelorette weekend, Sissy is stuck in a remote cabin with her high school bully and a taste for revenge. Hashtag triggered. Stars Aisha D. and Hannah Barlow. I got to say, I saw this one too. It's very interesting because Sissy comes across as someone who's very lonely and is a minor influencer. Well, not minor. She's got more followers than we do, right? Like, so, I mean, she's
a decent following. She's got like 200,000 followers or something.
A lot of followers. So. I don't know what she's doing, but she's basically trying to share her mental health advice with people, even though she's not a psychologist or anything else. And she reconnects with her best friend from grade school. And she was also bullied by somebody that's also friends with that best friend. And then she goes away to this retreat and she's triggered and it goes into full on horror mode. What did you think of Sissy?
I really enjoyed the way that they presented her character, because when we first are introduced to her, we feel like she is just this really nice, the dichotomy of any influencer and how different their personality is on their YouTube or their TikTok or whatever versus how they are in reality. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And just how fake it can be, the way somebody presents themselves as being one way and then you find out their true personality and you're like, oh, you're a little different than I expected.
Including they have a British accent, apparently. That's weird.
We all have multiple personalities. Hey, I'm a Gemini. What about it? But I really liked the way that they presented her character and kind of the unraveling obsession with being seen in a particular way and making sure that your reputation stays intact, which a lot of this relies on. A lot of this is on the back of, I can't let people see that I'm not this beautiful, humble person who is focused on mental health for everyone and that sort of thing. And I'm going to inspire you. And so any challenge to being seen like that is a trigger for her. It really is. And I really liked that. But it also focuses on, I think, if you look at it on kind of on a deeper level, which I try to with movies, the way quote unquote cancel culture works. Now, I don't really buy into cancel culture. I feel like it's consequences a lot of times, but
not that thing.
Hold on. But there is something where it's like, at what point do we not allow people forgiveness and the opportunity to change? If something is from a decade ago or 2 decades ago, and they've changed who they are as a person and they've tried to be better and they try to help others be better, do we still hold that against them and say, no, well, you were a bully when you were in elementary school, so you're still a bully today? You know what I mean? And I feel like it really tries to subtly get that across to you, at least for your consideration, not to tell you one way or the other, but for you to consider how you feel about that. And do people have the opportunity for a second chance and to redeem themselves? Or if you make a mistake and you're at one point not a great person, are you stuck as being not a great person no matter how hard you try?
Sometimes, yes.
I guess it depends on how bad of a person you are, right?
Sure. It's asking really, really good questions. And you do really start to feel for Sissy, even when some horrible things happen. I loved Aisha D's performance in this. I really did. Because even when something horrible happens and it's really kind of her fault, her performance is she's in such an influencer mode. As soon as anything happens, like she clicks into it, like, oh my goodness, it's just it's just so well presented that
what is happening?
I had a hard time not rooting for her, even when I know I probably should not. So I really loved her performance in this.
No, I'd agree.
So if $10 is the full price of admission, what do you give Sissy?
I'm going to give it 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I gave it 6.50. I really it was a fun midnighter experience. It's basically a genre film, horror film, and I hope people find it soon because it's definitely worth the look. Now, Tony Hawk, Until the Wheels Fall Off, is directed by Sam Jones, and it follows, that one skateboarder guy. It's an intimate, revealing, and visceral deep dive into the life of Tony Hawk. Now, you must preface this review with you are a total fan of Tony Hawk, correct?
I am. Yes, I have been inspired by the man for the majority of my life for as long as I can remember. And I understand the impact and influence he's had on the sport, the way he's changed it. So I go into this obviously with the goggles of I already recognize that, I already appreciate him, I already respect him and have a lot of love for him. But I can still look at this as a documentary. I'm still capable of criticizing it from a documentary perspective.
Even with your squee goggles on, you can.
Faux show.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did this teach you anything that you didn't already know, or a real fan? Not real fan. I hate that term. Sorry. I even apologize for accidentally saying it. Do you feel like the documentary taught you anything about Tony Hawk that fans wouldn't already know? And did it come across as a really good documentary? And did you feel like it was well worth the time you spent on it?
So the first part of your question, did I learn anything new? I actually did. I learned quite a bit because it's not just a recap. This is kind of what I was worried about. There was a documentary that was created that I reviewed on the website, thehollywoodoutsider.com. It's called I'm a Superman, the Tony Hawk video game story. And I was worried that this was just going to be a retelling of kind of the same story that we all know. This guy grows up, he becomes a really crazy skateboarder, he does all of these tricks, invents all of these tricks, over 100, and he becomes a superstar. He gets video games, created after him and his influence and all these skateboarders. He starts donating to, creates a foundation to help kids get skate parks in their area, blah, 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 blah. Yay, such a great guy. This is not that documentary, which is actually very refreshing. Especially when you have the director, Sam Jones, collaborating with who the documentary is about, Tony Hawk, you really expect it to probably always shine a really beautiful light on Mr. Hawk. And it does not do that. It goes into a lot of the depths and crevices that you probably don't want the world to know. There's a lot of things that Tony isn't proud of as a human being, and he's actually very vulnerable in talking about that and talking about how his rise to fandom and not dealing with his mental health, and his wife actually talks about it. His brother talks about, the perspective they have of him and the reality of who he is versus, what we see him as. And he's very open and honest and accepting of the mistakes he's made and how fandom got to him and what it made him do. I shouldn't say what it made him do, but what he did as a result of having it. And so that's a really unique aspect to a documentary that with an individual that's collaborating with the director. So that was one unique aspect of it. The other part of it is it's very personal. It's very intimate. You're getting interviews with his siblings. You see him actually interacting with his mother, who is at a assisted living facility, I presume, and she can barely speak, if at all. And so that's very touching and very sad at the same time, heartbreaking. But we also get to learn more about the evolution of skateboarding and what his influence was, what his dad's influence was, and all of the isolation and outcast feeling that he had to endure before rising to the ranks of celebrity and fame. And so it's a really unique way to present a story. They have a ton of archival footage of Tony, of his family, and interviews with people that saying stuff that you really wouldn't expect them to say. I don't know, if you were to talk to my siblings or something, I'm sure they're going to tell you that I was a jerk when I was a kid too. And they're very honest, and they're like, Tony was kind of a jerk when he was a kid. Cool. Tell me all about it. I love that.
I bet you they're not going to say is now because he's got that money.
Well, that's the thing is that there's even his wife now was very real about who he was throughout their marriage, and he actually accepts it. He made mistakes in their marriage.
That's cool.
And he's confronting that on camera in an interview while, his wife is sitting in the audience with him. And so that I think is huge for a documentary to touch on. Yeah,
that kind of genuine honesty is very, very hard to come by. So $10 for full price admission. What do you give Tony Hawk Until the Wheels Fall Off?
I give it $7.50. It reminds you that regardless of how hard things get, you have to get back up and try again. And that's kind of the story of Tony Hawk.
Get back on the board. Got it.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'd love to hear from people connected to this film, including maybe Tony Hawk. Do you got anything you can help us with?
I do. I have a lot of special somethings for you. The first special something is a short interview with Mel Eslin, who is an executive producer alongside Mark and Jay Duplass. So I want to ask you real quick, what about now? Like, why now is this project happening?
Why now? I think the biggest thing that I learned through this process was it really is all about, like, getting down and, when you get shot down, get back up. That's all about, skateboarding, and it's Tony's life and his motto. And I think in these times when we're dealing with so many things that are kicking us down, it really is all about, like, we got to keep getting back up.
Oh, yeah. I love your shirt, by the way. Yes. It is right. Yeah, exactly. We're not done yet, and we're not to Tony Hawk. We have an interview with the director, Sam Jones, who I found to be, first of all, an amazing guy. I won't tell you the entire story because we're saving some of that for Patreon. But I do want you to know that this is a very humble and kind man who essentially made sure he came back because he was interrupted, came back to do this interview. So I really appreciate the time that Sam spent with me.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, of course.
The Hollywood
Hi,
Outsider.
Amanda.
How are you?
Good.
I bet you're very excited.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
My question for you is about, obviously Tony has influenced multiple generations. What was your first interaction or memory of Tony, or even more broadly, skateboarding?
Well, I was at Del Mar Skate Park when he was there, when I was 16 years old and he was 14, and I skated all those contests, and skateboarding was my life. So, he was always just there, but he was always the phenom that everybody looked up to. And he was sort of the standard that no one could reach. But we all aspired to be like him, at least for me. And so I kind of knew him. It was a small sport back then. It was it's a very small scene. It was not televised or anything. So if you were in it, you sort of were just rubbing shoulders with all the people that turned out to be the greatest, of their generation. And Tony was one of those people for me.
Why do you want to do a documentary now that his career's, I wouldn't say wrapping up, but he's kind of exited from contests and all of that? Why now do you want to do a documentary on him?
Well, I think that, for one, I think having the career that he's had and still loving it so much and still innovating, it brings up questions of identity and mortality and how long can we do these things. And for me, being his age, a lot of questions about my own life, about how do we put away the things we love, or do we have to put them away? And how much risk do we accept into our lives? And how do we balance that with the joy that we get from the things we loved? It's a horrible thing to think, I've dropped in on my last half pipe, or I've played my last game of full court basketball, or jumped my last motorcycle. Like, I don't want to think any of those things. And but those things are all questions as we get to a certain age. And I thought that was a fascinating theme for a documentary, was that Tony was still skating at the highest level. And how does that play out?
And last but not least, the man, the myth, the legend, Tony Hawk.
He of the broken leg syndrome.
He was there. He was there on crutches 6 days post-surgery from having a broken femur. So God bless the man for being such a trooper. Hey, Tony, I just want to ask you, skateboarding has been kind of an escape and a way to cope with mental health and trauma for a lot of people. What do you think it is about the sport that does that for so many?
I think that it gives you a sense of self-confidence, maybe like no other sport that you have experienced. And I think that the idea that it's all on you to create, to manifest tricks, to learn techniques, and the value of perseverance, I feel like there's not much else out there that does that. And that's always been my way of staying healthy mentally.
What do you remember as your first moment of being like, I want to skate, I want to do that?
I saw someone fly out of a bowl when I was about 9 years old, and I didn't even understand how it happened. I didn't understand how he did it, but I knew then and there that I wanted to figure out how to do it.
That's awesome. One last question for you. As a father now, how do you feel when you look at skateboarding as a sport and as a hobby? How do you feel it's differed from when you were a youth?
There's much more opportunity, and it's more widespread. When I was a kid, skating was the furthest thing from cool you could do, and we were all outcasts and shunned basically from mainstream, and we didn't care. We embraced that. We liked it in a lot of ways. But now it's much more accessible, but it still has that sort of gritty, the gritty foundation where it is a bit lawless still, and that's what I appreciate about it. It's a mainstream activity that's still very edgy.
I want to say thank you personally because you've been an idol since I was a kid, and you paved the way for so many generations and for women to be part of that.
Thank you very much.
And I hope you're feeling all right because
I mean,
now that you're kind of in retirement, you're breaking shit. So
I'm in the thick of it, but I'm only 6 days out of surgery, so I feel okay. Thank you.
All right, time to move on. I feel like it's an emergency.
Ha ha ha, that's so funny.
Wow.
So Aaron saw this film called Emergency. Ready for a night of partying, a group of college students must weigh the pros and cons of calling the police when faced with an unusual emergency. Can you tell us about this unusual emergency, or is that part of the allure?
I think it's kind of important to tell you about the emergency. The emergency is they are black guys and a Hispanic guy. They find a passed out white girl in their dorm room. And
that is not good.
That is not good. And they are terrified of calling the police because of obvious reasons, you know.
Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah. So it is very much a topical film, and it kind of, you know, I mean, it explores the whole why do black men, why do people of color have concerns with calling the police, you know, and is it a rational concern? Is it just them overthinking the situation? It's something that I had not even thought about being put into a film, and to be perfectly honest, and I really thought, wow, this is intense. This is interesting. It's a very honest, fair topic, because I think we all know that why people of color would be concerned about calling the police, right? I mean, the statistics are out there. You can believe them or not, but they're there. And they're very concerned with, okay, we found this white girl. She's passed out. She's obviously incapacitated in many ways. What are the cops going to assume when they show up? Are they actually going to believe in us, or are they going to assume we did something to this woman? And that's where the real issues come in, because you have Donald Elise Watkins. He plays Cooney. He's basically looking forward to a future, an academic future. You have R.J. Seiler, who plays Sean. You know, he's kind of he smokes a lot of weed, and he just wants to have fun. And they were getting ready to have the time of their lives, go to the party and have a great time. And of course, this stupid white girl's got to pass out in their dorm, or their house. They got to find out, you know, that this poor white girl is going to ruin their night. Meanwhile, you have white girl's friends trying to look for her throughout the night. So there's a lot of combining factors that go into it. And it's a comedy. It's also a drama. I mean, it's very much riding the line. It's realistic. It's fair. And it also kind of, I think, kind of paints a picture for people that don't understand why people of color would have concerns, why black people and Hispanic people, but black people in particular, would have concerns about calling the police in these situations. Even though people know it, I think it's different when you see it. And that's right, where Emergency really kind of does a really nice job of painting that picture and, you know, illustrating here is why. Here are the concerns. And they also kind of cover both bases. Like, you're kind of being ridiculous in some ways by not calling the cops immediately. But also, I get where you're coming from. So it's, catch-22 in many ways.
So if the full price of admission were $10, what are you giving Emergency?
I give it $6.50. I think it's a strong film. It's a fun-ish film, even with the topic. The characters and the actors are really, really fun to get to know. They're people that you can come to believe in. And the only downside is I think the ending doesn't quite stick the landing based on the subject matter. I feel like it's almost a little too neat in terms of how it's wrapped up
okay.
in some respects. But they also still do kind of directly address the more intense concerns that would be present during the situation. So it does go where you think it's going to go. I just feel like the actual bow at the end is a little too neatly tied based on the subject matter.
All right.
All right. So I also want to mention a couple things that I went to, which were, just to kind of give you an idea of the panels that are there. Like I said, there are some political panels. There are panels that cover everything. If the Boys had a panel there, that's kind of like a Comic-Con vibe where you can go and you can hear the stars talk about the show. They also had Planned Parenthood was there speaking about recent Texas laws that, once again, make it difficult to be a female in Texas, apparently. It's kind of a terrifying topic that we're not a political podcast. I'm not going to go into all of that, but I just want to explain that they have a lot of different options there for you to partake in. So if you don't want to see a movie that day, or you don't want to see certain particular panels of other celebrities or filmmakers or artists, you have other options. There are political options as well. There are also, there was a podcast presented there. Bob Odenkirk and his son Nate Odenkirk created a podcast called Summer in Argyle because his son basically wrote a podcast he was going to do with his friends. And then his dad saw it and said, I want to be part of that, and brought all his famous friends involved. I don't know what happened to all of his son's friends, but apparently they got kicked to the side.
I think we know who has the better friends, though.
Wow. That's harsh.
Well, one group of friends made it to the podcast, another group didn't. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah, that's true. Kind of feel bad for those poor kids. They were like, this is my break. Oh, I guess I'm never going to do it. So, but they were there to advertise a podcast that they created called Summer in Argyle, which follows a small town. It's a short series, but it has David Cross in it, Bob Odenkirk in it, and it's got a lot of famous comedians in it. And there's a murder and a hot dog eating contest, and it's just wacky. But they were promoting that there. So, there's a lot of different things at South by, and I'm only bringing these up just to illustrate some of the things that are there.
Well, the next movie that you saw is called The Prank. Ben and his slacker friend, Tanner, play a prank on their high school physics professor when she fails them on a test. They teach the imperious, demanding instructor a lesson by falsely accusing her of the murder of a missing student on social media. This sounds like it could be a lot of fun and also interesting if they did a really good job with the prank, but also really terrible because they sound like horrible people. How did this one turn out? Is there a comedic element to it?
Yes, very much there is a comedic element. And I should say that Mrs. Wheeler, the teacher, is played by Rita Moreno.
Yeah.
Yeah. The legendary actress. She's freaking 90 years old. My God. And she still gives a great performance. So
awesome.
It has a very comedic tone for much of the movie, about 2/3 of the movie. And then the last third kind of shifts genres a little bit. And that portion gets a little, wait, what? And makes it a little bit harder to swallow. But it's still engaging throughout. I will say that they are horrible people. I don't care what the circumstances are. This woman can be a tyrant, and it's fantastic seeing Rita Moreno basically torture high school kids, because I've never seen her do this before, and I think she was marvelous at it. She's like a buck soaking wet. That's like how much she weighs. She doesn't weigh much. And she's also 90 years old. But she still comes across as intimidating. That's an impressive performance to me. To have a 90-year-old tiny woman like that kind of scare me is pretty impressive. She has just audacity. She has sheer confidence. She is not suffering any fools. And the whole concept of Ben is desperate to get a scholarship so he can't fail anything. and she finds out that there's a cheater in their class, and she's going to fail everyone unless they come forward and tell her who the cheater is. That's the whole idea. So then Tanner has the idea, well, we'll just make her look like a murderer, and in social media's eyes, it won't stick because, it's just nonsense, but we'll make it look like it's true. This is the prank. And then she'll be discredited and she'll be humiliated, and they won't let her do what she planned to do with failing the class. And then it spirals. And of course it gets deeper and deeper. Cops are involved. They start looking at this woman for this actual considerable possibility maybe of a murder. And things just go just crazy from there.
It sounds kind of awesome. What did you give, aside from the tone change that you were mentioning, what did you give the prank?
$6. Tone change is a big factor. That, and not because I don't have a problem with the way that the tone went, which I'm not going to ruin or anything. It's just, I don't think they did enough to really flesh that out. So it kind of hurts the final act a bit. But Rita Moreno is great. Okay. She's absolutely great and wonderful in this role. I was so shocked that this was as good as it was, because she's 90 years old, for crying out loud.
I mean, good for her.
Oh man, she's got it. Like, she's
we
always
love a
had
successful lady.
Oh yeah, there's a reason why she's been herself for so many years. Just a wonderful actress. All right, now you saw A Woman on the Outside. This is interesting. Crystal is a young, ambitious Philadelphian driven to keep families connected to their incarcerated loved ones. But when
driven.
But when her father and brother return from prison, she confronts the ultimate question: can she reunite her own family? Tell me about A Woman on the Outside.
That's an interesting synopsis. It's very encompassing of it. But essentially, Crystal is someone who
just so you know, I didn't write it.
Crystal is someone who's experienced being on the outside with incarcerated loved ones since she was about 4 years old. Her father got a significant amount of time. Her brother was incarcerated. She is a social worker. And when her brother got incarcerated, she actually made it her mission to try and adopt her nephew because she was taking care of him because his mother was incarcerated in and out of prison as well. And so he didn't really have someone stable, and she wanted to be that person. She actually got into social work despite the horrible pay for social workers, so that way she could be an advocate for her nephew, which is huge. And that's not even the coolest part of the story. So above all of that she's taking on at 27, 28 years old, she also starts this business to drive loved ones of those who are incarcerated from their area in Philly to this prison, which is like 200 miles away. It's extremely far. And a lot of these women don't have the ability to travel that far to see their person or keep their families connected. And her goal is, as someone who's had a family distraught from the disconnect of the prison system and her family, she wanted to kind of be the glue that keeps other families together, which I think is really inspiring. And among that journey, she learns a lot about her family. She learns a lot about how kind of messed up our system is. I think she knew that going into it, but she helps us realize how crazy it is. Just even the probation rules for someone getting out of prison. At one point, someone is selling socks that have marijuana leaves on them to try to make some additional money, and she actually buys the socks for this person, and they have to go back to prison because somebody saw a picture of it, and that violated their probation, which is wild. So they got 6 months back in prison for selling socks, which is just
the socks
crazy.
Had no weed in them, right?
No, they just had a picture of a leaf on them. And these were already made. It's not like this person made them or she made them for this person. It was essentially just reselling. So it was just very crazy. But I
don't
find
even get me started on how we treat people that have been incarcerated. Okay, the whole theory is, right, you serve your time, yet we're having
you're going to come out rehabilitated.
Yeah, but we've got a job shortage, right? People can't find workers, but they won't take people that have been in prison. The whole idea is that they've been rehabilitated, so give them a shot. Oh my God.
Yep, that's the whole thing.
I can go on a whole tirade with that.
Yeah, I could too. It's something that definitely touches home. And when you look around the room, she had asked during the Q&A, or somebody had asked during the Q&A, how many of us in the audience had known someone who was incarcerated. A lot of hands went up. So there's a lot of people who are affected about it. And I think what's interesting about this documentary is we're not just focusing on the people who are incarcerated, which is typically the avenue that it's looked at from. It's about the people on the outside, the people who are struggling to take care of their family, the people who, have to try to keep money on their books so that way they can afford different things, but also take care of the families all by themselves. So now they're single parents. And it's just a really sad but still humbling and inspiring story about a young woman who is doing everything she can to make something right that she believes in. And I just love that. And the story with her and her nephew, she literally is essentially his mom at this point. And I think that's incredible.
It's a documentary too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So $10 full price for admission. What do you give A Woman on the Outside?
I give it $6.
Okay. Next up is a little film called The Lost City. Now, that's going to be in theaters March 25th. You might be listening to it before it comes out or after it comes out. I don't know. But I'm going to tell you, it's fun. So Sandra Bullock, Channing Tatum, and Daniel Radcliffe star in the action-adventure comedy The Lost City. It basically follows a romance novelist. You're going to get Romance in the Stone vibes if you've ever seen that movie. Mm-hmm. She stars as Loretta Sage, who is struggling with the fact that she is kind of tired of writing about this character Dash, who is always portrayed on the cover by Channing Tatum. And then she declares that she's going to kill him off in her next book. So, of course, he's crushed because he also kind of has a thing for Loretta. And also, she's kind of sashayed away by Daniel Radcliffe's character, Fairfax, because he believes by reading her books that she might have the clues to solve a mystery of where hidden treasure is. And they all come together. And also, once Loretta is kind of whisked away, aka kidnapped, Channing Tatum brings in this little-known actor named Brad Pitt to help break her out, and things go crazy from there. So we both saw The Lost City. We saw it. It was a fantastic event. Sandra Bullock was there. She's just somebody that's really hard to not like, especially in person. Daniel Radcliffe is like a wind-up toy. That guy just has energy for days.
He's so adorable and short and tiny.
You could put him in your pocket. So, Amanda, what did you think of The Lost City in terms of a film?
It was a lot of fun. It is one that made me laugh. It is more funny than just the previews. We've had this conversation with a couple of people, you and I have, about, is this one of those where all of the good jokes are shown in the trailer? And there's not. Like, there's so many jokes throughout the film that I was constantly laughing. I was constantly surprised. There was so much that I did not expect. There's obviously some level of predictability to it, which I'm totally fine with because of where the predictability falls. But I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a really fun action adventure comedy.
Oh, that we need. That's how I felt. When it was over, I'm
totally.
Like, I needed this. I needed escapism. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love heavy dramas, love genre flicks. I love horror movies. I love all the intensity. On the same token, sometimes I just want to not check my brain at the door because I think it's a smart movie. I just want to have fun in a theater and not have stress for a couple hours. And that's what this was. I just felt like, and people were laughing where they were supposed to laugh. They were thrilled when they were supposed to thrill. There was genuinely a few surprises. And one huge surprise. I mean, there's like
a massive surprise.
We're not going to ruin it here, but there's definitely some things that will catch you off guard and some pretty funny jokes. And I will say, Sandra Bullock is kind of going back to the role that she's known for, right? She's done some really big dramas on Netflix the last few years, but man, this is the kind of movie that she's known for. And she says that she's taking a break after this one to spend more time with her kids. Channing Tatum very much is playing a character for the first half that is basically the guy from 21 Jump Street. I mean, he's almost the same guy.
So dumb.
He seems that way, right? But then he really kind of morphs into a fully fledged character or fully fleshed out. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but that's what you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He becomes a real character, and it actually has character development as it goes. And it was cool seeing Daniel Radcliffe play, a villain. I've just never seen him play a villain.
Yeah.
And I felt bad for him to a degree because everybody wants to ask about Harry Potter. And I'm like, hasn't he done enough to where he doesn't have to be asked about Harry Potter every damn time? I mean, the guy has gone against type every single time in a movie since then. Ask him about something else, but people gonna be people.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I will say for Channing Tatum's character, what I really enjoyed is that it's very much so about like, don't judge a book by its cover, which is ironic because she's a novelist. But he is very much that character where we see him as just being this one-dimensional, dumb, handsome idiot, basically, who you think cannot do anything right. And as his character develops, you're like, you kind of feel for him and you're like, oh man, I've been judging him myself this entire time and now I'm the jerk.
Yep.
And they made me feel like a jerk. And I'm happy that they made me feel like a jerk because it made me realize that. But I really enjoyed Daniel Radcliffe, and also Oscar Nunez is in this and he is amazing. I love his character.
Oh, I do too. And I should say, like, Brad, yeah, he's just a wild character. Oscar Nunez is. Brad Pitt, it's really just a glorified cameo. He's only in it for, it's a short period of time. It's a really small role, but he's fantastic every time you see him on screen.
My God, he's amazing. He's amazing.
He's great. Great chemistry with Channing Tatum too. Because I mean,
yes.
Because Brad Pitt's character is like just a badass, ready to go guy, and Channing Tatum kind of seems like a dim bulb when he's next to him. It's great. So, if $10 full price of admission, what do you give The Lost City?
I give it $7.50. What did you give it in your written review on thehollywoodoutsiders.com?
Well, I gave it $7.50 as well.
Nice.
Yeah. And you know what? We said we were going to give you a taste of South by Southwest. So here is a taste from inside those doors. Here's a little snippet from the panel of The Lost City.
So, and how was it for you watching it?
It was amazing to watch it with this audience. You guys were on a trip. There's some things in that movie that we haven't seen in the audience, so it was very, very fun to listen to you guys scream at butts and
Anybody else care?
Yeah, but this is the first film I've seen in any cinema in 2 years, so it's so it's lovely to watch it with you. You're a lovely audience, thank you.
Sandra too, or?
Me what? I've always got something to say. No, it was the first time we've seen it with an audience, and our score, Pinar, who did our score, but we hadn't even seen yet. Everything was Zoom, everything was virtual, everything was, in little cubes, and you just had to pray. And seeing it in the theater just reminds you of why we love the theater.
Well, the cast is, remarkable. I mean, the chemistry, they're fantastic. So how did you figure that out? How did it come about?
Well, Sandra was great in the audition. She prepared a song. She just wanted it, and we like building careers, giving young people a chance in life. Actually, so Sandy and Eliza came to us, and we first met with them. So Sandy was attached to be in the movie, and then in terms of casting, when you do have Sandy as your star and as your producer, it's easy to get people to take the meeting, I guess I would say. So we were very fortunate and got all of our top choices.
We were also willing to pay, so we paid really good money. Because we were saying, come and make a movie during a pandemic, put your life in our hands, and we will pay you. And they showed up. It was amazing. I mean, he's still alive.
Channing, however, is not here, but...
He's not alive.
He is safe.
Channing is still in the jungle. Yes.
We left him there with Brad.
Thanks so much. I'm glad that the first audience you got to see this with was the South by Southwest audience, the greatest audiences in the world. There are a lot of us out here who are fans of romance, fans of adventure. I wonder, in what is next for the five of you, what things you would like to tackle. Dan, I know that you've got a production of Merrily We Roll Along coming up. Are there other musicals that you'd like to be in for the directors, the producer, for Sandra? What would you love to tackle next?
Yes, I'm doing the musical, as you said. That's very scary, but very exciting. And I also I just finished playing Weird Al, which is also
gonna go make a Masters of the Universe movie. I feel like this movie has totally spoiled us in terms of cast and the whole thing. It's gonna be hard to match.
And I am just going to take some time to be a mom.
Yeah, so remember my question. So it looks like so much fun, and so is it fun, or is it just it's actually work, or is it fun?
She was the one in the jumpsuit. You should probably answer that question.
You know what? Being collaborative with other human beings who you respect and admire, and we get to do this. We get to do our art, and we get to have a studio funded, and we get to have some trust. Paramount's in here. You didn't trust us completely, but you trusted us kind of. We get to do this. You can't complain. There is so much going on in the world where they should be complaining. We get to make art. We get to make joy, and we had joy for 3 months in a jungle. The jumpsuit. It's a part of me now. It's still embedded in body parts, but I will have it with me for the rest of my life. And when the sun hits that part and it reflects a little bit of you, I will think of extraordinary people I got to make memories with, and my children got to come with. And it's sort of like a rebirth. You come out of this thing and you go, we're still here, and we're very blessed, and we live in a place that is pretty extraordinary.
Hi, my question is for Sandra. I apologize for this question in advance, but which scene that includes leeches did you like more, this or Speed 2?
That's a hard one. Look, both of them had their pros and cons. I'm a committed actor, whether it be on a very slow boat towards an island where we could have jumped off, or digging things out of Channing's ass. I would say that the dig with Chan is one that I would do over and over again.
Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to ask about the casting of the role of Jack Traynor, since that's a part that I think sort of plays off of the notoriety of the actor in the role. Were there any other performers ever considered for that part, or was it always going to be Brad Pitt?
We went through a whole litany of people. He was like the 8th choice. Yeah, we paid everyone really well.
We talked about Brad initially and then said, that's never going to happen. And so we didn't go out to him initially because it felt ridiculous. And then Sandy worked with him on Bullet Train, and somehow, in just like chatting...
We know how that happened. He and I both have the same hairdresser, and she told him to do my movie, and she told me to do his movie, and that is honestly exactly how
in this process, like making a big movie, is how powerful hairdressers are.
All about the hair.
Yes, go ahead.
So my question is for Sandra. So you're one of the biggest reasons for George Lopez's success, especially with the George Lopez show, and that actually did a lot for the Hispanic and Chicano communities. And I'm just curious to know if Fortis Film or you as a producer, will provide more opportunities for the Hispanic communities.
Yes. I don't look at it as separate communities. We're all one. And George made his career because he was brave enough to share his life story. He's talent. Our whole crew is talent. I love stories that show the imperfection of love within families and communities, and that's all of us. And I would love to. When I'm done being a mom, I'll get back to it. I don't know when that's going to happen, probably when they're teenagers, like really solidly in like 16, 17-year-olds, and I'll want to like get back to work. But it was such a joy doing the show with George and our crew and our writers and the cast and the community. It just, here I was, this white woman who fell in love with this comedian, and it gave me such insight, and I grew, and it was amazing. It was amazing. I was lucky to be a part of it, and I'd be honored to be a part of it again.
Thank you.
All right. Now, Aaron saw another film called, well, not another film called The Watcher, but a film called Watcher. And it is about a young woman who moves into a new apartment and is tormented by the feeling that she is being watched. That sounds like my worst nightmare. I have also been there. Does this do anything new or unique?
This movie is the definition of slow burn. So if you do not like slow burns, do not watch Watcher. Because it is very
Good to
much,
know.
yeah. Maika Monroe is this woman who, basically, her husband, her new life, she has moved to Romania. He's got a new job, and she's basically, obviously there's a language barrier. There is, she has a lack of friends. So the whole idea of the film is isolating her, right? She's very isolated. She is not exposed to a lot of people because she doesn't know a lot of people. She can't speak the language. And she starts to feel like a neighbor across the way is watching her. And as the film goes, you're really seeing it from Maika Monroe's point of view the entire time. You're kind of seeing what she sees, and when she's walking around and she thinks she's being followed and that sort of thing, like you're feeling what she's feeling. And her husband is not really believing her. People are not really believing her. And there are some crossed visuals that will kind of make you wonder about what you're seeing to a degree. And it's kind of Hitchcockian in the way that it plays out, because it's just shot very, very stress inducing, and it really has a slow build to the eventual conclusion. But I think it's a very well told thriller. It's really interesting. And my tension and the hairs on my arms were going up as the film went. So it really delivered for me.
I have a question about this because I've been a young woman, and a lot of times when you try to tell somebody that you're experiencing something, this is actually, like, through research has been proven in the medical field that a lot of times women will go to their doctors and they're not believed about their ailments. And it's a huge concern and a huge issue, actually. And so I'm curious, it kind of sounds like there may be a little bit of that too, where people aren't believing her because she's a younger woman. Do you get that impression, or is it just like because of what she's talking about, she sounds crazy?
No, it's not so much because she's a woman, but there is very much like you're alone a lot, you're isolated, you don't know people here, so maybe you're overthinking it. There's a little of the, are you sure you're not the one doing the watching? There's a little of that. I'm serious. I mean, that they're playing with that kind of thought process too. So I don't think it's what you're saying. I mean, I know what you're talking about.
It doesn't play on her age, really. Then?
No.
Okay.
It's more on her emotional state and how erratic she's kind of becoming as the film unrolls.
Sure. Okay. So if the full price of admission were $10, what are you giving Watcher?
$7. $7. The ending
Pretty
was
solid.
Like, oh yeah, the ending I was like, oh no. And probably not in the way you think. So it's a good film. It really, really slow burn. Don't watch it if you don't have the patience, because if you're one of those people like, nothing happened for 20 minutes because oh God, then don't watch this. You won't like it, but it's good. I enjoyed it. Also want to kind of come back to, I went to, Amanda, where were you this whole time? That's what I want to know,
I didn't do panels this year. I really didn't. I did want to go to the Planned Parenthood one, but I did not make any of these.
You sure did.
And apparently I missed out because the Lizzo one, which I know you're going to talk about, they were doing like hair and nails and stuff.
They were.
For free.
They have these all over the place, but this is the one that I went to as part of press, which is the Amazon Prime Video installation, which is basically a pop-up in the middle of freaking downtown Austin, where you get to live vicariously through either the boys is part of this installation, or Lizzo, because they both, she's got a show coming out on Prime Video.
It is out now.
Oh, is it now? Okay.
Yeah.
It's insane because it was so cool where you walked in and if you kind of, I lean more toward the boys, I like comic books and heroes and stuff. Well, you had half of the whole installation was everything vault related. You got a vault burger. You could have drinks related to the boys, like named after them. There's a whole freaking carousel named after the boys. I mean, and then the other side, it's Lizzo. It's hair and makeup. It's body positivity. It's get your hair done, your nails done, or whatever that was. I didn't go there because I don't have much of either, but people seem to really love it. Really, really love it. And I mean, it was very cool because it's literally a city block almost. I think it was a whole city block, or at least a half of one, that is set up for this installation just to promote the show. And I was there as press, but any badge holder can come. That's the cool part, is that they can come and you can kind of have this really cool setup. It's almost like a theme park of sorts on two things, and both cater to different demographics, but you can enjoy both or one.
That's really cool.
At this event. It was pretty neat.
It reminds me, from how you're explaining it, of the Good Omens, also from Amazon Prime.
Almost exactly
Is it similar
the
to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Same concept.
And I lied because I don't know how dates work. It's March 25th is the episodic premiere of Lizzo's Watch Out for the Big Girls. And that's without an I, with 3 R's, in case you're wondering.
And The Boys comes out in June for season 3. But if you haven't seen that show yet, please go watch it. Please go watch it. You know what? Now we're going to kind of sidestep from films for a little bit because we've got some episodics that we saw.
And the first is Shining Girls, which Aaron saw. Mm-hmm. Years after a brutal attack left in a constantly shifting reality, Kirby learns that a recent murder is linked to her assault. She teams with veteran reporter Dan Velasquez to understand her ever-changing present, and confront her past. This has Elizabeth Moss in it, and I do know your review on it because you talked to me about it, and it is going to be amazing from the sounds of it.
I was stunned at how good it is. I don't know why I'm stunned, because Elizabeth Moss is one of the best actresses on television. Yeah, she's fantastic. Like she doesn't pinch hit. You know what I'm saying? It's always a home run with her. It sounds very similar to a lot of other shows in many respects. Oh, we're going to find a murderer. Okay. Yeah, yes, but it's also a lot deeper than that. The tone is very Mayor of Easttown in the sense of, yes, they're trying to find a killer. On the same token, they're dealing with real people and their flaws and their reactions. And Elizabeth Moss's character, Kirby, is someone who was assaulted, and it has caused so much damage to her, so much stress to her, so much trauma to her, that it actually affects how she sees everything in her day-to-day life. She will go to work and she thinks she has a different desk than she did the day previously. She will go home and things will be in a different place. She actually has a notebook where she has to kind of write down, do I have a dog? Do I have a cat? You know, what is it? All these little details, because her brain, she is so overwhelmed with grief and trauma that she has a hard time processing her own life anymore. It was a tragedy for her. You know, it really affected, and it was really, I don't want to say wonderful because it's kind of a horrible situation, but it was very fascinating to see that kind of trauma brought to the screen in a way that I thought they made relatable for everyone. So you kind of, by the end of the episode, because you're very confused for a big portion of the show, like what is happening here? And by the end of, especially the first episode, you get the understanding that, oh, she is so haunted and just traumatized from what happened to her that it has affected every aspect of her life. Beautiful performance. Absolutely beautiful from Elizabeth Moss. I mean, she is the show. She makes the show.
It sounds kind of horrifying, though, at the same time.
I think it can probably be triggering if you've been through an assault. Yes. But I also think that's what they're trying to do. Like, part of the point is to show that you need to be more understanding to someone, because, I mean, you don't know what they've been through and how it affected them. Don't just shortchange them because, and they're kind of doing it under the guise of, yes, she can help with this murderer that's on the loose, and maybe she can help with a recent case, with this journalist with a recent case, but it's also more about the trauma that she's endured and can she overcome it.
So this one comes to Apple TV Plus on April 29th. So you have a little bit of time before this one comes out to prepare for it emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever need be. But what do you give Shining Girls?
I give it $9. I loved it.
Wow. Super solid.
I loved it. Yep.
The next one that you saw in episodic is The Girl from Plainville. This is Hulu's limited series, which is inspired from the true story of Michelle Carter's unprecedented texting suicide case, and it has Elle Fanning in it. I was very much so looking forward to checking this out and did not have the opportunity. Liz Hannah is the showrunner and one of the showrunners and screenwriters who was also the writer of The Post and Long Shot. So, I like her a lot. What was your take on The Girl from Plainville?
It's difficult because you really just hate this woman, right? It's hard because I already know the case, which is, and I don't know, should I tell people what the case? I probably shouldn't, right? In case you didn't know.
Maybe just briefly, like just a little bit, but not all the details.
A young man kills himself, and this young woman, Michelle Carter, is very affected by that. Very just to everyone around her is devastated. Even people that didn't even know she knew this guy. Come to find out, she was texting him the whole time and encouraging him to kill himself. And she was charged with involuntary manslaughter because of that. Now, I can say, because she was convicted, that this chick is messed up. But as a show, I mean, it's interesting to see it unfold. It's interesting to see how it plays out. Elle Fanning does a wonderful performance because her entire character, the fact that I can even have an ounce of compassion in the show is all due to her, because I know who this woman is and I have none. Like, I have none for this person. So she did a pretty wonderful job of creating empathy in a character that I think is undeserving of it. Does that make sense?
It definitely does.
My only downside is this story, I don't see how it needs 8 episodes. I just don't see how it needs 8, because it's not that's 8 hours to tell a story that I think you can tell in 2. So yes, it's compelling. Yes, I'm engaged. Yes, Elle Fanning is very good. I don't know how 8 episodes are going to play out as a whole. I can just say it starts off strong.
Does it present itself in a way where they're trying to get you to be compassionate towards this person, or like they're painting her in a bright light? Is it from her perspective, or is it a more unbiased perspective?
Keep in mind, I only saw the first episode from South by. They presented it very much as this is what seems to be the mindset of this girl. So I think they're trying to be fair, but also I haven't gotten to the point where all of the really horrible things have come out yet. I mean, to a degree, the cops are unaware at this point, but in terms of seeing how her reactions are, we don't really see how they're presenting that as of, an episode in.
Okay. So this is coming to Hulu on March 29th, and you did say it was 8 episodes already. What do you give The Girl from Plainville?
$6.50.
All right.
Okay. DMZ. That is a 4-episode series starring Rosario Dawson and is already available, and Benjamin Bratt, and also Hoon Lee, who I love. Hoon Lee. He's in Warrior. He was in Banshee. He's always a fun element. But this is on HBO Max right now, currently. Set in the midst of a new American Civil War, DMZ, which stands for Demilitarized Zone, leaps off the pages of the acclaimed graphic novel into the visual landscape of a war-torn Manhattan as one woman navigates a dangerous and distorted demilitarized zone in a harrowing quest to find her lost son. Amanda, you saw DMZ. What are your thoughts?
I did. So originally at South by, they only screened us the first episode, but I wanted to finish out the rest of it so I could give kind of a more comprehensive review of this. In totality, I feel like it's one thing to look at one episode and judge it. It's another thing to judge the 4 hours.
Sure.
So I did end up enjoying the show. I do not think it needed 4 hours, though. But Rosario Dawson is kind of the key that makes everything work for this show. She is just such a powerhouse of emotion. I love her. I mean, if you're a fan of her work, you'll probably, I don't feel like it's much different from anything else. She has the ability to come off very strong and determined and capable of anything, while also showing so much compassion and empathy and softness. And I love that duality of her character, which is in the show as well. It's a little bit of, I think we were talking about this, Aaron, because you saw the first episode as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know you mentioned you weren't crazy about the way they present essentially the projects, the hood, which is DMZ at this point. There are rival gangs occurring. There's a glimpse of community in the first episode where people are kind of helping each other out and serving food to each other. So there is that, but I don't see that evolve really. They kind of push that to the side and it becomes more the focus of just Rosario Dawson's character trying to reconnect with her son, and if she does find him, what is she going to do? Is she going to stay here if she doesn't find him and continue to search for him? And then what all is going on with these rival gangs trying to unite under one gang, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it in the past. I grew up with the project, so it's not so much that I don't think that they do a good job of kind of explaining it. I just feel like it's a little bit of typecasting and stereotyping involved, and that's just the way I understand it. In the future episodes, they really kind of deepen that, so it's a little bit more layered than it seemed to me initially. And if that's the case, then I'd be more on board. I definitely wanted to check out more of it. I was just had some moments. So as a whole, then, does it really stick the landing? It's kind of cool that Rosario Dawson has basically been a nurse in the DC universe, because this is a DC property, and also Marvel. That's kind of neat. So yeah. Did it stick the landing then? Even though it's a little longer than you think it needed to be, do you feel like it works as a whole?
Yeah, I feel like it had a solid conclusion. I will say that it probably has more emotional impact on anybody who's watching it now. This was very unintentional, obviously, to present such a harrowing glimpse into the impact of being in a war zone with Russia and Ukraine right now. But I think that makes it even more impactful to watch. And so there may be a little bit of that influences enjoying is like a really weird word when you're talking about something that's so terrible.
Sure is.
But you know what I mean? Where it's something where you're like, I can connect with this on a little bit of a deeper level, and it hurts me a little bit more. And so it has a more emotional impact than I think they even intended for it to, just because of the timing simply. And this was obviously filmed prior to the Russia-Ukraine war breakout. So that, on top of her being a mother and just trying to do whatever she can to find her son, that emotionally touches me. And they continue that emotional touch throughout the series, the limited series. Yeah. And so I do think it sticks the landing, but it is a little bit too long.
And just think, originally it was going to be an ongoing series, and that probably would have been too long.
If they fleshed out the stories more, it probably would be fine. But they really, like, what we learn about in the first episode is kind of what they focus on for the rest of the series. They don't introduce a whole lot more.
It could have more characters, and it would be...
Yeah. Or if they focused on some more story development aspects, I think they could turn this into a world. But, and it is based on a comic, in case you're not familiar.
So $10 full price admission, what do you give DMZ?
I give that one $6.
Okay, now we've got a little snippet, little taste of South by here from the panel for DMZ. Take a listen.
How much of that world did you feel like you needed to know in order to understand what this character is going through? Because there's so many events that sort of predate the starting point for this story, not just in terms of what you've been through, but what the entire country is going through.
I actually go back. I was just thinking, listening to all of your answers. I remember I'm on the board of V-Day. V, formerly Eve Ensler with John Monologue, started this anti-violence organization years ago. And I remember she was getting an award in DC from an organization called Men Stopping Rape. And it's so important because it's so often in the work of anti-violence women, and women aren't raping themselves. And it's really very important for men to participate. And I remember she couldn't give this award, she couldn't accept this award, so she asked me if I would go and accept it on her behalf. And she had this speech, and there was this one line in it that just hits me all the time, especially after watching this. She said that bullets are the hardened tears that our boys are not allowed to shed. And I think about that so strongly. If you are not allowed your full spectrum of your humanity, your emotions, and seen as all of that being important and valuable and necessary and normal, it doesn't go away. You harden it, you swallow it, and we can see how being isolated from each other during this pandemic, just how scary that can be for your mental health. And I felt like that was, something that really informed it. We shot the pilot, and we finished it in March 2020. And then we didn't come back to this for another year and a half. And so we had a lot of time to deliberate on this story and these characters and these pivots in the story that came quite quickly because we did not have all of that space. It was crunched into these 4 episodes, and so it made every single beat intense. There's sometimes you can watch a show and there are those filler episodes. There's no filler moments at all in this entire thing. And so I kept thinking about that. And someone asked us earlier, what kind of projects were we watching or comics were we reading or things that would kind of get us into this, and it was just real life. This just felt very, very, very real to me. And I think that's actually some of the beauty about a lot of comics that I've grown up really loving, is that you can really sit with characters and elaborate and explore in a way that's not held back because of budgets or any other kind of normal constraints. You can really kind of, whatever you can imagine can happen on these pages. And so many of the stories that I've been able to tell, a lot of them have been comic characters. And I've played a nurse now in the Marvel world and now in the DC world. And I have to say, I really love that has been a character that I've been able to show to the world can be a hero. And we've noticed that and really taken that into account in the past 2 years, looking at the nurses and the doctors on the front line of this pandemic. And I think it's just so powerful and so critical to, when we can, there's a lot of things I've done and that we've gotten the chance to do that is really awesome. And entertainment and distraction, I think, is wonderful and also just as necessary. Play is so necessary. But in a project like this, where you get to really deep dive and, kind of use the spectacle of a big, we really, the explosions, the whole thing. I mean, it's the fanfare that you're expecting from something like you read the comic DNZ, it's a big scoped project. But what Rebecca did with this and what Ava, came on board to do was to tell a much smaller, much more insular, much more intimate, specific story. And I love that you can explore that in comics. I love that you can explore that in film and television. And I love that in this tremendously big spectacle show that we got to do that as well. And it couldn't be better timing, I think, to have, it's really triggering, I think, especially now, some of the footage of this with a lot of the footage that we're currently seeing on our news. But I think there's a real heart and a lesson that is there that might be really surprising for people to encounter in a fictional work. And I'm really grateful in all the years since this comic existed to now coming to fruition and being available to you all intimately in your homes that it's now.
And now Aaron saw The Man Who Fell to Earth, based on the Walter Tevis novel and the iconic 1976 film starring David Bowie. The Man Who Fell to Earth follows a new alien character who arrives on Earth at a turning point in human evolution and must confront his own past to determine our future. I don't care about anything other than Jimmy Simpson is in this. Tell me all about it.
Jimmy Simpson is not a major character. I mean, he's not the star. He's not the star.
Okay, I'm sad.
Yeah, Chiwetel Ejiofor, he is the lead character of this film. Naomi Harris is a scientist that he needs to hook up with as the alien. I really
hook up with?
No. He needs to find her because there is she has done research that everyone ignored that could help the world. And he is basically trying to help the world, but the world is the world, so it's not as easy as he hoped. And he's also an alien. So he's got to learn language. He's got to learn how to adapt, how to address people. And it's kind of how we get to where he is you kind of open with him in the now, which is, I mean, he's basically a filthy rich entrepreneur who is telling the world his story, and then it kind of goes back to his story as an alien who landed on Earth, and he's going back. The show is run by Alex Kurtzman, who you might know from Star Trek and other things, the revamped version. It is a fun show. It is zippy. It is entertaining. It also has dramatic stakes. It's nice to see Naomi Harris as a lead because I love her, and I think she gets the chance to expand. Ejiofor is always good in literally everything, even if his name is so hard to say that I just try to say it as fast as I can so I can get past it. But they're wonderful actors. It's a great story, and I really feel like it's something that I would want to continue to watch.
Awesome.
And Jimmy Simpson. Hey, love Jimmy Simpson.
What's the price that you're giving The Man Who Fell to Earth?
$7. I really think this is one to watch.
Solid. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Now, you and I both saw We Crashed. And, I'm going to the series is inspired by actual events, okay? And the love story that's at the center of it. WeWork is a company that grew from a single co-working space into a global brand worth $47 billion. You can Dr. Evil that. $1 billion in under a decade. Then, in less than a year, its value plummeted. What happened? That's the concept behind We Crashed, which is an Apple TV show, and it's already airing. Stars Jared Leto. Just came out. Jared Leto, Anne Hathaway. Let me ask you. The cast is pretty stacked. Just those two are pretty stacked, and I do think Jared Leto did a pretty substantial job of mastering the accent that's at play here.
Yeah, he did.
But you were less loving about this. So please tell me, or tell the audience, why you didn't really dig We Crashed.
So at the end of your synopsis, you had said, "What happened?" And all I could think was, who cares? That's kind of what I feel about this. In terms of a show, it looks nice. It looks pretty. It's told in a great manner. The cast is wonderful. You have Anne Hathaway and Jared Leto as your two stars. But I also feel like, at least at this point, Anne Hathaway doesn't have much to do, which is a discredit to her as an actress. I feel like she has a lot of talent that we can work with. Mm-hmm. And Jared Leto is, honestly, to my chagrin and surprise, he is kind of like the guy that's making the show somewhat interesting for me. Because,
you're not a Jared Leto fan? You're not a Jared Leto fan, typically?
I'm not anymore. I'm not crazy about him anymore. I used to, but I feel like he kind of went off the deep end.
The Joker? Joker ruined it for you?
He goes a little too far.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, he has a wonderful performance in this. I feel like his character has to be a Sagittarius because of how confident he is in his potential to do anything and everything. Yeah, God bless him.
And if you don't know who Adam Newman is, go research it. He does a very admirable job of bringing him to life. I will give him credit for it.
Yeah. But I guess in the end, I just felt like this is not a story I care about. I don't care about these two now pretentious people who are losing their massive corporation. I just didn't, they didn't give me anything to empathize with Rebecca, who's Anne Hathaway's character. At one point you're kind of like, oh, I feel for her. She's in a struggle. But then it's like her character doesn't really do anything. So then I lose any interest in the progression of her story. I have an interest in Adam's progression and kind of how he managed to go from knockoff stilettos that like literally collapse to this massive idea. And it really is honestly his friend and partner who
it's Miguel.
We can give all the credit to.
Kyle Marvin plays Miguel, and he's literally the guy that comes up with all the ideas. And, Adam just has the confidence to go sell it. So, it is very hard to get excited about this show because I'm like, I don't like these people. I just don't like them. Like if I were to meet and it's hard, it's kind of like Succession. I can't watch Succession because I hate everybody on it. I just don't like a show like that.
Yeah. It's to me, it felt a little Kardashian-esque, where it's just like rich people who are now sad. And it's like, oh boy, Normally, I feel like I would care about a story like this and want to know what happened to the company, but they focus so much on the people that if you're not invested in the people, you're not invested in the show. And I was only invested in one character. So it kind of lost me pretty quick.
I think I liked it a little bit more than you, but if $10 full price admission, what did you give Wheatgrass?
I gave it $5, so it's about average. Yeah. It's a good production, good quality. If you do get strung in by the story, I think you'll enjoy yourself.
And I do think there's a lot of people, like if you enjoyed the show Succession, I think and there are a lot of people that love that show. I am not one of them, but I love that show. I can respect the acting that's being done here and Leto and Hathaway's performance for what they have to work with, but I kind of concur with what Amanda's saying. Check it out if you are fans of Succession though. And I would give it $5.50. But I do have a snippet from the panel with Jared Leto and Anne Hathaway. So take a listen here.
And Jared, with all the footage that there is of Adam, were there any particular interviews or pieces of footage that were especially useful to you in really finding him as a character?
Yes. The really interesting thing about, I'd never done this before, I don't know about you guys, but I'd never made a film or done any kind of acting that was based on a story that was so fresh. So the fact that it was so relevant and it was so recent was great. And we were just buried in material, which I love. I love the research process. I love preparation. It's been really my favorite part. Second to like the last day of the job. That's really fun. And he was really verbose, and he was the face of the company and a great salesman and marketer. So there was a lot there, and we had this. Anybody listen to the podcast? It was great. I mean, it's a beautiful podcast. If you hadn't had enough, you can get a little more. Listen to the podcast. But just a wealth of material, and I spoke to whoever would speak to me. People were quite willing, his friends and people that worked with him. I spoke to a lot of people firsthand, and you become a detective of sorts. You dig in deep, and you just kind of start writing a story. And it's never going to be Adam. It's a painting, not a photograph. Right? Isn't that poetic?
It's almost like you know what you're talking about.
You can take and steal it. Just give me a footnote.
I mean, Jared's mentioning talking to people that were friends and worked with and knew Adam, and you similarly were able to talk to some people that knew Rebecca personally. What were some of the useful details that came out of those conversations for you?
The word that kept coming up to describe her, and I would. By the way, I forgot to mention before, I worked with an amazing researcher named Amy Hammond, who, she did so much work in terms of getting me to understand the world that Rebecca comes from. And so I spoke to a lot of people, some of whom are from that world, some of people like me who were born outside of it, and might have a different perspective on it. And the word across the board that came from people that had spent a great deal of time with her was, she's so sweet. And given what I had read, because I didn't know anything about the New York story until I read the pilot, and I did my, quickly Googled them, and I read what the, it's okay, you get it. Do you want me to say hi? We're good? Okay. I like your hat. And she, there were words that I was saying. Jared, can you just finish this with, I like it when you talk.
No. You were doing fine. Low tech.
You're talking about research.
Yes, research and reading.
That's right.
Yes.
And
yes.
So I read a few of the articles that were written online, which have their own take on them, their own slant, and I just thought, wow, what if I afforded the people that I read in that article, I afforded them their perspective, but also I afforded these other people this other perspective. Well, this just seems like a human being, and a human being is a mixture of traits that are admirable, and then we also have things that we're working on, and so then we just try to infuse her with that every day, and just try to say she didn't do everything right all the time, but nobody ever has, and all the time that on all the human beings that have been alive. So the sweetness, that was the word that really opened her up for me.
Now the big episodic premiere that everyone is waiting for.
I'm so excited.
Halo. Dramatizing an epic 20th century conflict between humanity and an alien threat.
century. It is not the 20th century. Thank you.
I said 26th.
No, you didn't.
It was probably just my accent. Let me restart. Dramatizing an epic 26th century conflict between humanity and an alien threat known as the Covenant. Halo the series will weave deeply drawn personal stories with action, adventure, and a richly imagined vision of the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Was it amazing? Was it all you dreamed of, you video gamer you?
Okay, I just want to point out I am not a diehard Halo fan, so please, I like the games enough to play them with friends. I only really play them on co-op because I suck at them, and that's what's amazing about Halo is there's a little thing called teabag, and if you play multiplayer, that's always what happens to me.
What?
Yeah,
I didn't know this because I couldn't get past the tutorial. I'm not terrible at video games, but I'm not good at this one.
I'm waiting for a teabag nod in the show, but look it up after the show if you don't know what that is, because it's quite disappointing when it happens to you. Halo is basically surrounding what are known as the Spartans, which are these super soldiers that kind of help the galaxy. And the show opens by showing an outpost, this group of individuals who are, they're essentially just, they're almost homeless. I mean, they're very, very financially destitute. They're very poor. And the Covenant, which are kind of space monsters, show up to steal something from their area and end up basically going after this entire outpost. The Spartans show up to defend them, but also a lot of tragedy happens in the mix. And then the show becomes about one particular girl named Kwan who survives, and Master Chief, who is the hero of this story, has to determine, does he follow protocol or does he help this girl? And that's what the show kind of is taking off on. Now, I've seen the first 2 episodes, but the very first episode I saw actually there at the Paramount Theater with an entire audience. And that is I think that's the showing you want to know about, right? Because the majority of people that are going to see that initially that are excited about Halo are probably fans of the game. They want to know, does this honor people that are fans of the game? And I will tell you, hell yes. The entire audience was full of gamer nerds extraordinaire. Like, they knew the sound. They heard the sound of the armor recharging and they lost their shit. It was amazing. It literally goes,
that's fun.
That's the noise. And people burst into applause. Those are fans, because nobody else would know that. I'm clapping because I got it. But people next to me were like, what the frack are they clapping about? I don't understand. But they still had a great time too. It's a fun science fiction show, fantasy show. Master Chief is a great character. There's going to be comparisons to him with The Mandalorian. I don't think they're fair because Halo has been around for a lot longer than The Mandalorian, just because he's got a helmet, I guess. And, I thought it was really engaging. The action was fantastic. The introduction of Master Chief, if you've ever played Halo, is fantastic. Like, the theater of 2,300 plus lost their goddamn minds. They were so excited. There's like a 10-minute action set piece that is movie quality that is in this Paramount Plus TV show. And
wow.
I was just jazzed throughout. I think it's a great show that I really, really just got into. I do want to temper expectations because I know I saw it with a bunch of people that were jazzed to see it. So I will say, it's still a very good show. 2 episodes in, it's still a very good show. And it comes out March 24th on Paramount Plus.
And what is the score you're giving Halo?
$8, man. It's fun. It's fun. And yeah, there might be people that, I'm serious, I've already seen a hint of some criticism where it's a bad Mandalorian. Oh, shut the hell up. It's nothing like Mandalorian except the guy has a goddamn helmet. That's literally the only comparison you can make. And yet I know it's going to be out there all over the place. I've already seen a bunch of it. That's not a fair comparison. If you know the story of Halo, it definitely has a lot of nods and love for fans. It also, if you don't know dick about Halo, you also will have a good time, because people I was sitting with had no idea what Halo even was. They were just wanted to see this new thing that Paramount was putting out, and they had a great time too. They just didn't know why people were clapping for frickin' sound effects.
Someone's 95-year-old grandparents are in the audience like, that was cool.
That was cool, Sonny. Yeah, Rita Moreno was in the audience, and she's like, "Hey." No. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun. And it's a show that is trying to give you more stakes in this kind of world than maybe we're used to. So I really dug it. Definitely. And we do have an excerpt from that panel as well, because you want to hear some Halo stuff. So here, take a listen to a little snippet from the Halo panel. This is the kind of stuff you get if you go to South by. So go to South by. That's what I'm telling you.
So I am very curious, how did you figure out how much of the big story you wanted to tell, like sort of each season? Did you, before you started doing season 1, did you say, well, we want to reach this point in season 1, this point in season 2? Like, how much was that factor?
I think it was more about starting with the story we want to tell right now, and sort of bringing new fans, new people, uninitiated to Halo, as well as the Halo long-timers, into a place where we can be entered into the world, invited into the Halo world through John and through John's discovery of his own humanity. So once we sort of landed on that as our core, our hub, everything spoke out from there, and it just sort of developed. And then at that point, you get into big questions of excitement, enthusiasm about there's so much out there in the Halo-verse that you want to, something yelled out the flood. You want to do everything right away. And so you do have those conversations, but I think you just got to be patient to tell the story you want to tell. And then every opportunity you get, you bring in canon, you bring in characters from canon, story ideas, gadgets, anything to sort of make the world feel real and expand the world beyond the frame so that everyone feels this is an authentic universe we built.
For the cast, what was it like actually reading these scripts for the first time and seeing the scale and scope of what they were trying to accomplish? Because this is not like a micro-budget show. This is really, we all saw the first episode. We see what's happening.
I got 1 and 2 before I signed on, and you could see right away that there was a restraint to the pace of the storytelling that felt like it was going to be fruitful and have a place in the world of high-end television. You could see that there was a desire to tell a human story that was going to pull viewers in, as we said, from the longtime fans to the uninitiated both. And it was big and beautiful, and the size of the world and the epic nature of how much we were trying to do was evident right away. So all of those elements drew me in immediately.
For me, I think reading the first script, it was really just Kwan's journey and the emotional journey that she goes through. It's just, I felt so blessed to be reading it and playing her. But also, I was like, it's Halo, and I can't, beggars can't be choosers. I was just a fresh graduate, so I was like, yeah. Of course I'm going to do this. Yeah, so that's my reaction.
Guys, they found 22-year-old Yaron Ha off an 21-year-old Yaron Ha off an audition tape from Australia. How incredible is that performance?
I think that I've never read anything as epic as Halo, and I think I couldn't imagine what it would be like. I think from reading it to stepping onto set was like, I read the script and I didn't know how it was going to happen on set, and I walked on the set and it was just so immense. And then, we wrapped and I didn't know how it was going to then translate onto screen, and sitting here today, it's mind-blowing. I know we're kind of raving about our own show, but really, we all haven't seen it like this, and it really is. We were just as blown away as anyone else in here. It's amazing to see.
For everybody, I love learning about stuff that you would never find out about. So for all of you guys, what would surprise people to learn about the actual making of Halo?
The ships weren't real. That was a fake condor on a stage.
Chevy Tahoes last forever.
I hate to be this guy, but to ask a version of the question that I think those producers can answer. We all love Pablo and think he did a great job. I think it's safe to say. Also really love Steve Downes. Is there interest in finding a way to involve him in the show?
Yeah,
students part of the Halo family. So, if it makes sense in the future in his game and, it's appropriate for the story, he's always welcome.
And by the way, let me say I love Steve Downs too.
And I'm texting him right after this.
No, seriously, the man is a legend. He established an amazing character, an iconic character over the course of the last 20 years, and he established the perfect character for the correct medium. And, that character for a first-person shooter game is exactly what was needed, and I studied it intensely. And now we're making a television show, and it's going to be a long-form television series that's going to last for multiple seasons. And the only way to tell that story is to get inside the helmet and get to know the character a little bit. So it's going to be necessarily slightly different, but with absolutely all of the elements of homage and respect that it deserves.
Okay, now before we move on, I gotta tell you, speaking of Paramount, the explosive fourth season of Paramount Network's Emmy-nominated series Yellowstone is now on DVD and Blu-ray. The Western epic, everybody I know that listens to this podcast raves about this show. The epic starring Kevin Costner is back for more danger and suspense as revenge drives the defense of the Dutton legacy. The DVD and Blu-ray comes with all 10 episodes, plus over 4 hours of special features, including making-of featurettes, behind-the-scenes clips, never-before-seen interviews with cast and crew, and a whole lot more. You can own Yellowstone Season 4 on DVD and Blu-ray right freaking now from Paramount Network and Paramount Home Entertainment. Go do it. Everybody I know loves that show. Yellowstone, Yellowstone, Yellowstone. It's all I ever hear about from people. So be sure it's Season 4.
Especially in our Facebook group, we have a lot of fans of Yellowstone.
They love it. Love it. Amanda, you went to More Than Robots, which was Jillian Jacobs' directorial debut about 4 teams of teenagers from around the world as they prepare for the 2020 First Robotics Competition. But in a year like no other, the kids learn that there is more to the competition than just robots. What the hell does that even mean? I mean, it's literally like a robots competition. What more could there possibly be besides the COVID?
COVID. The pandemic really messed some things up. But at the same time, so first of all, I went into this not really knowing much about it, just got an invitation to join and was like, sure, I'll go check it out. And it is from Disney Plus, so it is a stellarly presented visual experience for a documentary. Like, it just looks really great. You can tell they had some authentic cameras out there. This wasn't shot on somebody's iPhone. Mm-hmm. And you're following 4 different groups of these young kids who they all have the same challenge. And each year, the First Robotics company in their competition creates something that's very unique and has not replicated or duplicated any of the competition experiences in the past. And so it's very unique for them. And they all have to figure out how this works, how they're going to make their robot work, how they're going to make their robot do what it needs to do. In terms of, in this specific competition, they have to be able to get their robot to basically shoot hoops. It also needs to play defense, kind of like basketball, if you think about it. And then they get extra points if they can get their robot's arms to hang on this kind of like seesaw triangle thing with the other competitor who is part of their team hanging on the other end too to balance it out. So they have to be very strategic in where they're going to put their focus for their robot, because if they are a smaller school with less funds, less resources, there's one team that's from Japan and there's not a lot of focus on extracurricular activities in general for students. And so they have to procure their sponsorship and funding on their own, which makes them quite limited in what they can do. So a lot of these teams, if they don't have a lot of money, then they're going to need to focus on one specific thing. Oh, we want to make sure that our robot can for sure hang on this seesaw thing. Like, that's going to be our number one, because then they go through a selection process. Like, the number one teams get to select who they're going to partner with. And you want to build the best comprehensive team you possibly can to win. So it really teaches them about collaboration, obviously all of the elements of STEM, which is really interesting to learn about. You get to see the teachers who are mentors, their perspective, and you really get to understand from the kids why they get invested in some of these things. And it's really fun to watch their journey as they go through, watching them rebound from problems and things that you think are complete failures. And for some people would be like, nah, there's no way I can come back from this. And these kids persist. And so that kind of aspect of it was really fun. It made me want to join a robotics competition for adults. I don't think they have them, but I want to start one. I don't think I'm smart enough, but I sure want to try after watching this documentary. So it is something to enjoy. And I think it would be fun for parents to watch with their kids and get some ideas, even if they don't have a robotics team in their area. You watch one kid start her own robotics team.
That's cool. And that's on Disney Plus right now, I believe.
It is.
Yeah, so there you go. So $10 full price admission. What do you give more than robots? Which apparently is about more than robots.
It's about teamwork and rising above. $6.50.
Okay. You had me until you said teamwork. So What We Leave Behind is the next thing. Now, you were really excited about this one. After a lifetime of bus rides to the U.S. to visit his children, Julian quietly starts building a house in rural Mexico. In filming his work, his granddaughter crafts a personal and poetic love letter to him and his homeland. You were really, really excited about this, but the impression I got was that it did not live up to your expectations. Is that correct?
It does not. I think in terms of the story and what it's trying to convey to us, it's very sweet. It is poetic. But it also feels like somebody who just grabbed their phone and said, I'm going to film Grandpa, which is kind of the unfortunate part. It's somebody who is, first-time filmmaker, and she does a nice job in certain areas, but there are some moments that it could have used some additional editing. There could have been some stronger filmmaking techniques used, and a little bit more. I think the editing really is where it struggled, because no movie comes to the screen looking perfect. You got to have somebody who knows where to cut, what things to cut out, how to make it seem like it flows really well, and that there is consistent conversation. But there's ASMR. I mean, if you're a big fan of listening to someone chew, boy, oh boy, let me tell you, you can hear that.
Oh my God.
But what I want to emphasize is how incredible it was to watch this man who, he lives in Mexico. He has to go to the United States to collect his income, and then he comes back to Mexico. His kids all migrated to the United States, and he has his own smaller home, but he bought this plot of land, and he's an older man, but he still works hard. And, you can tell that he's the leader of things. When you watch him in the areas, he's like, oh, you got this? Or, he's keeping things running. But he buys this plot of land and he decides, hey, I'm going to build a house for whomever of my family needs it, whoever wants it after I go on. And it's kind of his way of passing his own legacy on, in a way. And the comfort he feels of being in Mexico and how just natural his presence is there versus his presence in the United States, where he doesn't feel as comfortable. That becomes very apparent. And I think that is something for us to consider, is like how welcoming we make other people feel and invited we make other people feel when they're in our country. The fact that he is so comfortable going back and forth as an old man on a bus so that way he can go back home to Mexico versus staying in the United States with his family. To me, that is a representation of where we could do better. And the sense of community in this Hispanic family is a great representation of Hispanic culture. And I think that is something that we needed to have on screen. We needed to see how they pray together, how they live together, how they eat together, how they build together, how they do everything together, and that they have each other's backs every step of the way. And you kind of tap into a little bit of his life and journey, which was sweet and sentimental. The unfortunate part is, I think if you haven't had the exact same experience, or if you are not part of that family, it feels like you're a little bit disconnected, because the story feels almost a little too personal and intimate, which is complicated.
So if $10 full price of admission, what do you give What We Leave Behind?
I'm going to give it $4.50. I think with some
It's been a long time talking about a movie you didn't like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, but let me just say, if the editing would have been a little bit cleaner, or just the filmmaking from the beginning, I think it would have been closer to $6.
Okay. Well, next up, we both saw this. The Cellar. Kira Woods' daughter mysteriously vanishes in the cellar of their new house. She soon discovers there is an ancient and powerful entity controlling their home that she will have to face or risk losing her family's souls forever. Now, the description really kind of tells you everything. But I will say, like, it was very, very cool. This was spun off from a short film that director Brendan Muldowney originally made, where basically the setup is the entire short film. And now he just basically finished the story, essentially. That Elisha Cuthbert plays Kira, who's the mother, and which is cool to see her back on screen. And she's on the phone with her daughter as she is going down to the cellar and slowly but surely keeps counting, but never shows up again. I don't want to give too much away, but it's intense. What did you think about the cellar in terms of, this is one that we saw together, so I know you really were into this movie a lot. And I was too. I jumped. I admit it. I jumped in one scene. But on the same token, I feel like you love this movie more than I did. I still liked it, but you kind of love this movie. So what is it about this movie that you loved?
I gravitated towards it because I felt like it had some unique elements to it. Mm-hmm. And for such a low budget film, there were a lot of moments that the cinematography just kind of wowed me and impressed me, where I was like, that's a really great shot. Like, I just love the way that the camera is moving along and brings intensity and discomfort to me. And that is something that I feel like is very unique to horror films, where a low budget filmmaker in horror can, if they can do that, I find them to be incredibly talented. And
great atmosphere. The film had great atmosphere. Yeah.
The entire time. I really enjoyed all of the acting of the entire cast, but the story, I don't know, it was just something where it was like, this is not what I expected to have happen. This is not where I expected it to go, but boy, was it a journey. and I really enjoyed the end. And he did kind of go through a little bit in the Q&A with us. So I think that helped solidify things a little bit more for you too, in terms of your enjoyment of the ending. Because at first I think you were kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this ending.
Yeah, kind of. And we were able to clear some air. So I'm like, okay, all right. I mean, if that's where you're coming from, I guess I can buy it. But, I had a little question here and there, but that's the advantage to seeing it at South by, so you should check it out there.
It is the advantage, is you get to hear how they came along to the project, and also where they were coming from when they were making certain aspects of the film.
It's definitely a fun thriller.
It is. I would encourage you to check it out when and if you can.
Yeah, trailer just came out for The Cellar, so you can actually see a trailer for it now. So if $10 is the full price of admission, what do you give The Cellar?
I give it $7.50. I really enjoyed it.
I give it $6.50. I liked it. And I jumped.
I left the screening and I actually texted someone to tell them, keep your eye out for this movie because I think you'll enjoy it. And that to me is a good mark of a film.
And now you can send them the trailer and be like, see?
I told you you're going to enjoy this.
Exactly.
Well, the next one is I Love My Dad. A hopelessly estranged father catfishes his son in an attempt to reconnect. It's inspired by a true story. This happened to this happened to someone. Mm-hmm. This is making me question all things about life and humanity. But it has Patton Oswalt starring as the father. And Aaron, you saw this.
Yeah.
I need you to talk to me about how you feel about this father catfishing his son to try to reconnect.
Okay. So I'm of two minds. I'm a firm believer that as a critic, you have to review the film based on the intention of the film, right? You can't base it on what you think in terms of what you wanted. It has to be based on the movie that was presented to you. Does that make sense? That's how I usually approach things. Well, the movie is just jacked up. Like, as a concept, I don't care if it happened or not. This is messed up. The son is very suicidal. He's literally on the edge at all times, right? And his dad is a factor for that because his dad has never really been there his entire life. So his entire life, his dad just fails to show up at any time. So his son cuts him out of his life and just says, you know what? I am done with you. I am done trying to make you happy. And this was written, directed, and also starring James Morosini as Franklin, the son. He cuts his dad off of Facebook. He literally says, and out of his social life, he blocks his phone calls. He just wants him out so he can process his own life. He's messed up. So Patton Oswalt plays Chuck, who's his dad. He creates an entire persona of this beautifully attractive waitress that's fictional, creates all these pictures and puts them all online and everything else so he can talk to his son. Makes his son think that he's interested in him as the girl. What? It is messed up. There's even
That's so messed up.
It is so messed up. But I have to. It happened, so I have to kind of go along with this journey. I am not with Mr. Morosini, and that I could forgive this kind of behavior, or that I could understand it, because I think there's no level of this that isn't just messed up. There's even a portion where they're sexting. So just keep in mind. There's literally a scene where the dad is sexting with his son. And yes, he looks disgusted, but he still does it. It's hard. It got an award, I think, from South by for a narrative feature. So,
it did.
Yeah. Good for them. Congratulations. I mean, I give them credit because it is a very audacious story to tell. And the fact that it's true makes it a little bit more understandable that you can't use that. That'd never happen. Yes, it would. Apparently, it did.
It literally happened. To James. Poor James.
Tell the guy that's in the movie that wrote it and directed it that it didn't happen, because he's going to tell you to kiss his ass. And in his world, it did. To my understanding, the way that it was explained, brought him and his dad closer. Great. I would probably punch Dad in the face a few times. Just think about that. Once you learn that you were sexting with your dad, ugh, that's gross. So I think as a movie, it works because the story's true. If I did know the story was true, I don't know if I could have made it through the movie. Does that make sense? Because it's true.
It does. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's Patton Oswalt gives a really good performance. I mean, you never really feel for him, but you feel empathy and almost kind of pathetic for his. You feel like his character's pathetic.
You pity him,
but you also well. Now you do anything for your kid. Why didn't you do anything earlier? But yeah, so there you go.
So what is the price of admission that you're giving I Love My Dad?
I give it $6. I think only because it's based on a true story, it's worth a watch. It's so hard for me to recommend it, though, because it was so hard for me to watch it. And at no point do I feel like any of this behavior is justified. So I got a feeling me and James would have a different viewpoint of how we handle that situation going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just messed up. God damn, that was messed up. All right. Speaking of messed up, Mama Bears is an intimate exploration of two mama bears, conservative Christian mothers who have become fierce advocates for LGBTQ plus people, and a young lesbian whose struggles for self-acceptance exemplifies why the mama bears are so important. This is a documentary that is really kind of dear to your heart in terms of subject matter, because you kind of are, you are very much an ally.
Well, I am. I'm bisexual.
There you go. That's what I'm trying to say it nice. I mean, I'm not speaking for you.
You're trying not to out me? It's fine.
Yes.
I'm out.
Okay. So how did you feel in terms of this subject matter? Because it was an interesting concept that you have very fiercely dedicated religious people that are fighting for LGBTQ people, which, you can feel whatever you feel. That's not common. So how did you feel about that?
Yeah, it definitely made me cry a few times. The thing that stands out most for this documentary is that A, these are real people. B, these are people who have made a drastic change in their belief system where they were basically on the other side. And one of the stories, the mother basically put their child through, this is what connected one of the mothers, is that they found this story about this parent who put their child through conversion therapy. This child later died by suicide, and it kind of impacted a lot of people. It had a far reach. And so when their child kind of expresses their own sexual identity and orientation, and they come out of the closet and they say, you're going to have to accept me, like, this is who I am, and this is what I've struggled with, and this is how it is. They start to see things from the other side of, well, just because my church is telling me that my child is going to go to hell, I don't want my child to go to hell. So what can I do to support them? You know, they start to see things in a different way. I think whenever it affects you personally, of course you see it differently. Not always, very much so not always. I have plenty of friends and exes whose parents were incredibly unsupportive, like many of these mothers were at one point. But I think what's very powerful about it is that there is a place, what it was trying to say is that there is a place where you can accept and love someone and still be religious. Like, you can accept that someone is gay, that they're bisexual, that they're trans, and still believe in your God. Like, they are living their life, you are living yours. Some of these mothers have turned into fierce advocates for their children and for others, which I think is incredible. And then there's the stories of, you know, the lesbian whose mom doesn't really accept it. Like, she loves her kid, but there's like a line, there's an extent. There's, you know, there's only so much that she's going to love her kid. She's not going to accept the lifestyle, quote unquote, that she sees her child living. And it's still inspiring to see these kids that are now adults coming out and saying, I'm going to live my life. You know, this is who I am. I'm going to own who I am. And even for them, they're like, I didn't realize that there was a place for me in religion anymore. And that's the part that makes me really sad, is that I'm not religious, but for people who are very devout Christians, or I don't know, Mormons or Jews or whatever your religion may be, if you feel excluded and isolated from something that you really believe in, your faith, your community is pushing you aside, I mean, that can really take a toll on you emotionally and mentally. And so for them to know that they still have a place in this world, but also in their religion, is massive. And so I really did like this documentary.
And I will say, growing up, as my mother's side of my family is very religious, even if my mother herself is not. But I grew up very much in that world, and that is very much a lot of that upbringing. I know how hard it is for people that are very devout to change that viewpoint or to adjust to that. So it's a very powerful story. So for $10 full price admission, what do you give Mama Bears?
I give it $6.
Okay.
The next one is Pretty Problems. It's a comedy that follows a flailing couple on a getaway trip with affluent strangers down the rabbit hole and into the most unhinged weekend of their lives. Smash a glass, take a ride. Can you tell me more about what this is?
Yes. This is what's the do you know those movies that are just about people kind of talking? You know, just gathering around a table or at a party or something, just having conversations. That's what this is. These movies normally do not work. Normally, you know, at some point you're just like, oh my God, are we done yet? This is freaking hysterical. I thought it's very much, Britt Rentschler is Lindsay. She is this woman who's basically working at a design shop when this woman named Kat comes in, played by J.J. Nolan, who is filthy rich. And she becomes taken with Lindsay, and she's like, you know what? Why don't you come out and hang out with us for the weekend? And then she ends up talking to her husband and basically making him go on this retreat for a weekend with these filthy rich people and another filthy rich couple. And they're not rich. They are, I wouldn't say destitute, but they're poor. They're in debt. You know, they're fledgling. They're trying, but they're not getting there. So they get to go, and yes, there's an element where they definitely feel, especially the husband feels, that they are entertainment for these rich people. And there's also them getting to live vicariously through these filthy rich people and kind of learning a little bit more about them. And as the movie rolls on, it's just like they're going in different scenarios. They're going to a vineyard. They're, Lindsay is kind of becoming desperate to have this lifestyle. Meanwhile, her husband is not interested in it. There are problems that come up on both sides, rich people problems, poor people problems, so just problems. And also the conversations that revolve around it. It is just a very, very funny movie with a very talented cast. And, even it's not trying to be heavy. There's definitely some drama involved, but it's really a comedy. It's just the different classes coming together and how audacious both of them can be and how ridiculous these characters are when they're stuck in these situations where they're not these people, but they kind of want to become these people. And the rich people kind of just like to play with them to a degree. So it's a fascinating and funny movie that I really recommend. Pretty Problems.
Awesome. What is the price that you're giving Pretty Problems?
$7.50. I mean,
solid.
I normally do not like these kinds of movies. I really had a good time. Amanda, you saw Millie Lies Low. I'm going to tell you, I saw this too, and I don't even want to comment on it. So when a broke and anxiety-ridden architecture grad misses her flight to New York for a prestigious internship, she decides to fake having made it to New York while lying low in her hometown, scrounging for another ticket, and kind of spying on all of the people that she told she was leaving behind. Look, we don't have to go into it because I'm not big on just trash in a movie, but I will tell you, I did not like this at all. I gave it $3. I just felt like it was not a good film. If you feel differently, please tell me, but what did you think? Okay. All right. Duly noted.
Okay, let me just say this. So I don't feel too different. I feel like Anna Scotney, who is playing this main character here, I feel like she is great in what she was given. I do feel like the film struggled with kind of overall plot and direction. I feel like they had an intent that they wanted to go with, and it sounded clever in the beginning. Like, how is this lady who's so anxious and so unwilling to admit that she has an anxiety problem, a mental illness, how is she going to cope and deal with all of this and basically perpetually hide from it? And some of it does go bonkers.
Should be great. This is a great idea.
Yes. There's one moment that was incredibly predictable, but still quite funny. And other than that, I would say that I didn't feel like we were going anywhere. And that was the unfortunate part. But I did like Anna Scotney, so I did give it 4.50 out of 10, primarily due to her performance.
Yeah. And bottom line, Millie could have stayed low. You know what I'm saying? Just stayed hidden. I'm just saying.
Moving on to Bitch Ass. In 1999, a gang initiation goes wrong when recruits break into the deadly game house of cinema's first black masked serial killer. Think Don't Breathe meets Squid Games, but black. Talk to me a little bit about this black masked serial killer.
Yeah. Bitch Ass is his name. Easily the winner for best title. Easily the best winner for best title. I love this title, even if I didn't love this movie. And that was their description, by the way. So, Amanda didn't write that. It's an all black cast. It's a black serial killer. It's very, very cool in terms of the idea behind it. I really dig the character of Bitch Ass, who's in his younger days, he was Cecil, and he isn't mentally challenged, but he's definitely a little slower than you would expect. And he's bullied and kind of tortured by the eventual leader of this gang. And so he becomes Bitch Ass. And Bitch Ass's method for killing is once he traps somebody, he will set them up in a game of sorts and, kind of think Saw, but more topical, like Battleship-like games, Connect 4 type game, games that but just retitled and repackaged so it's not a copyright infringement or trademark infringement. And then if you win, allegedly you get to go. If you lose, you lose limbs. And then
allegedly,
yeah. And it ends up being very, very bloody. So there are 4 recruits that go into Bitch Ass's house because his grandma passes away and they know there's some money in there. So they want to rob this house. And, Bitch Ass is there and he's waiting for him. And he ain't gonna let their bitch asses get out of there. So it's, it's very much a slasher movie. It's
Ain't nobody gonna rob me.
Exactly. It's directed by Bill Posley, who my full review is on the site if you want to read that. But I will tell you, I have nothing but love for the genre. I definitely see a ton of potential with Bill Posley. I feel like you can feel that he does love the genre that he's handling. Maybe it's an issue of budget or whatnot, but it just never really feels intense enough. I just feel like it's a good idea for a character. The execution is flawed. I love that it's bookended by Tony Todd introducing the story. I think that's a great, nod to black horror. It just doesn't work as well as I think it could. There are some good moments. There are some really creative kills. There are also some really generic and lame ones, and that really offsets. So it kind of makes it not as nearly as good as it could be. And, I walked out of there going, this could have been better. Definitely. But it did make me say, I'm going to watch out for Bill Posley because I think he might make a great horror movie someday. Like, I feel like the love is there. The potential is there. Maybe he's just not there yet skill wise, but I feel like he could get there easily because I felt the love coming through. It just didn't really gel for me.
All right. And what is the score you're giving bitch ass?
I'm giving this bitch ass $5. Yep.
All right.
Man, $20 for the title. I love the title. All right. So we both saw Master. 3 women strive to find their place at an elite New England university as the insidious specter of racism haunts the campus in increasingly supernatural fashion. Each fights for survival in the space of privilege. This is one that was one of Amanda's hand. It's already on Amazon Prime, so you can watch it now. So Regina Hall, Zoe Renee, Talia Ryder. I'll be short and sweet with this because I feel like there's a good concept here. There is some tragedy involved. I just don't think the execution is as well as could be expected. I would give it $4.50. I just think that it was a little bit disappointing in my opinion.
I would concur. I like Regina Hall, so I gave it 5.
Okay. You can watch it right now. I'm sorry, I got right through that one because I want to get to this next one. I love this movie. Freaking love this movie. All right. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Woo!
It's a hilarious and big-hearted sci-fi action adventure about an exhausted Chinese-American woman played by Michelle Yeoh who can't seem to finish her taxes. The whole concept of this movie is that she owns a laundry. She's called in by...
She owns a laundry? She owns a laundromat.
Laundromat.
That's what they're called.
Whatever. So
she owns a laundry.
She's called in by an auditor. It's the same freaking thing. She owns...
No, it's not. Laundry is what you take to the laundromat. This is hilarious.
Whatevs. So she goes to the IRS to talk to a tax auditor because her taxes are a mess. And when she gets there, it goes full Matrix. And she is accosted by her own husband, but it's a different husband. It's like a multiverse husband who is telling her that he needs your help to save the world. And she has to come to grips with this. And then there is this just crazy explosion of the multiverse, her ability to basically hack into other versions of herself in other universes and assume their powers and whatnot to use it towards thwarting villains because she's trying to take on this very ominous force. And it's her husband, her daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis as this tax auditor is also a very big pivotal character. Amanda, what did you think about Everything Everywhere All at Once? It's so hard to describe this movie, but literally there is no genre for it.
It crosses the multiverse of genres even. It is wild. It is bonkers. It is funny. The fight scenes, the choreography are insane. Guy Hua Kwan.
Ki Hai Kwan.
He's fantastic. His choreography and his scenes are beyond what I anticipated and hoped for. I mean, truly, they were just magnificent. Jamie Lee Curtis. Mwah. I love her. Chef's kiss. She is tremendous in this and absolutely hilarious. Honestly, the entire cast is at the top of their game. They're so much fun. And I truly just don't understand how all of this came from two men's minds, how this came from anybody's mind. and how they managed to bring it to fruition and put it on screen. Because if you were to describe to your friend and say, hey, I wrote this movie, and they say, what's it about? And they were to tell them, if the Daniels were to tell them everything that they did in this movie, they'd be like, are you crazy? Do you need help? Because it is so bonkers, but it's glorious at every moment.
It's glorious. It's pervy. It's funny. There's a lot of action. Short Round is here. I mean, that's really enough for me. Jamie Lee Curtis is totally just playing a character. I mean, she's not even playing a role she normally would play. It's pretty wild what she does. Michelle Yeoh is just given an opportunity to finally, it's not fair to say finally, but I feel like she's always pigeonholed as just a martial artist in a lot of her movies. She's a very talented actress, and she gets to really, really expand on that in this and show exactly who she is and what she can do in terms of acting. And my God, you were not kidding. There is so much just, it's so hard to explain the movie without really spoiling something, because if you had a kitchen sink, this is the throw everything but the kitchen sink in there. I think they threw the sink too. I think they really just threw everything they'd ever thought of, every crazy idea, and threw it into this movie. And most of it really works. And there's a lot of stuff. There are rocks talking to each other. There are butt plugs. There are all kinds of things. I can't even say what happens with these things. I'm just saying they are part of the movie, and it works.
Honestly, even saying that doesn't spoil anything, because no one could predict what they're going to do with these things.
A lot of times something will show up and you're like, well, I don't know if that's going to be useful. Oh my God, that was a part of the movie. Okay. I thought that was just a joke. I thought it was offhanded.
And it's so clever, though. Yeah. It's so clever how they incorporate these things that they know are going to make you laugh, and every 8-year-old in the world laugh. But please don't show this to your children. I don't think you should show this to your children.
On the same token, I will say, as the film goes, there is really a really human element of mental health and depression and, just generational trauma. I believe someone used that term.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And just how, because a lot of things are how much of what you teach your kids is what was forced upon you that it might not be the best thing for you. And maybe you're not living your dreams because you're so stuck in the way your parents wanted you to be, stuff like that. And that's, because her dad, Michelle Yeoh's dad is played by James Hong, and he's very traditional, and she kind of goes against tradition in some respects. So it's a lot of this stuff is like, there's a really pivotal, deep, impassioned story at play, as well as the craziest ideas and theories and possibilities you could come up with. This is what a multiverse should be, by the way.
Absolutely.
It's bonkers.
And there's you and I kind of talked about this after the movie as well. There's this really impactful storyline that doesn't get missed. It's not like they're being incredibly subtle with it. It's just not the primary focal point, but it is significant enough. And it is a lesbian child, and you see the struggle from both her perspective of trying to get her parent to accept her, and also the parent's perspective of trying to accept it and learn, and also just that keeping with tradition. I think you mentioned that with, you're passed along these ideals from your parents, and so from generation to generation, it's hard to break that and create your own concept of what you believe is okay versus what your parents just taught you or your community taught you is okay. Society says for generations, no, this isn't okay. And you kind of have to come to terms, Michelle Yeoh does, what do I believe? What am I okay with? And how does this affect my child? And how does this affect me? And kind of those boundaries. And so there's a lot of underlying conversation about that too, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, it's easily my favorite film of the festival. I'll just take that
100%.
Take that right now. But I will tell you, the only issue I had was it's about 20 minutes too long. Like, I did feel like there was a time where we should be wrapping this up. And that's the only thing that really hurts. I think it should have been tightened up a little bit, and it would have made it almost a perfect experience. I honestly, for a good hour and a half, I didn't even realize the time was going by. I was just so in awe of everything that was happening. That's
totally
my only downside to it. So if $10 is full price for admission, I give it $8.50. Could have been a perfect movie though. I mean, you should see this in a theater with a whole crowd of people. What do you give it?
Same. I echo all of your statements and your score.
Okay. Well, we also have a little snippet from South by Southwest. So let's go ahead and you can hear a little bit from Short Round.
Yeah. So we saw a lot of creative, wacky stuff like the hot dog fingers. I'm wondering what kind of ideas were left on the cutting room floor.
There's one that like some people on set were like, "That's my favorite thing I've ever worked on," and it's on the cutting room floor. It's called Spaghetti Baby Noodle Boy, and it's a universe where a talking macaroni doesn't understand why he's not a spaghetti, and his mom has to explain to him he's a macaroni, and Spaghetti Baby Noodle Boy was voiced by Jenny Slate, and she did an incredible job, and it just didn't quite fit in the movie. We tested it, and we were like, I don't know why there's that 2-minute spaghetti scene, but it's a Blu-ray, it's not dead forever,
Maybe another hour of DVD extras and other ideas. Come here.
Speaking of voices, I didn't see credit for the voice of Raccacoonie, and it sounded to me like Randy Newman. Was it Randy Newman?
Was it Randy Newman? It was, we got him. Our incredible composers who are in the row right there.
Stand up, someone else. Come on, someone. Say hi. Say hi.
They had to write a song in the style of Randy Newman for Randy Newman, and then like pitch it to Randy Newman. And luckily he was gracious.
And the whole track is available on the soundtrack.
Oh yeah, there's an extended
Out
version. Yeah.
end of the month, so you can go pick up a Raccacoonie. It's going to be on vinyl eventually, but for now you can buy the soundtrack.
I'll buy everyone. He's my favorite character. I've been putting raccoon emojis on everything since we saw the film. Okay, next question.
I wanted to ask the cast a question because the multiverse is such an interesting concept and has endless possibilities, as this film definitely demonstrates. What was the process for you to prepare for these different versions and characters? Did you find any difficulties trying to find the exact differences in characters?
Well, for me, I was really nervous in the beginning when I read the script and I got the part, because I'm playing not just one character, but 3 versions of the same character. So it was really important to me that you're all able to distinguish each character just based on how he talks and how he moves and how he walks. So yeah, luckily I had like 3 months to prepare and do research for this. So I hired literally an acting coach, a dialogue coach, a voice coach, and most interestingly, a body movement coach. And the body movement coach had a really interesting process. He read the script and he would pick specific animals to represent Alpha Wayman or CEO Wayman. For example, Alpha Wayman, it would be an eagle, and CEO Wayman, it would be a fox. And then for the Wayman, in this universe, it was a squirrel. So I would watch countless hours of videos of a squirrel. Nothing but squirrel, how it walks, how it eats. And not only that, I was required to print out pictures of different looking squirrels. And I had them taped on my wall, like the entire wall. And basically, I don't think my wife was very happy about it, because no matter where she goes, she would see pictures of that. And the process starts where I'm 100% squirrel. So I was literally in the theater on all fours, walking, crawling around, eating like a squirrel, and then slowly transform into 100% Wayman. And that was my process for this.
Yeah, next time you see him in the suit as CEO Wayman, you'll be like, ooh, fox.
And something else that I really resonated with here is the topic of, I would assume, mental illness, and how easy it is to fall into these ideas of existentialism and nihilism. And so I wanted to know if there was really anything that inspired that side of the story.
I love these questions. We could just
you would never know this was an action movie, guys. I saw this Q&A. I love it though. It's so great. Thank you. I'm glad you like Swiss Army Man. Sorry, you were
No, I think Dan and I were excited to take a multiverse movie as far as it could possibly go until it got to Nihilistic Nowhere Town. And that was inspired kind of by some of our darkest thoughts we'd ever had. And it felt like what an interesting thing to do with science fiction, to go somewhere like philosophically scary, you know? And that was, we reflected on ourselves and what took us there and why, you know, and how to get out of that. And this sort of answers your question, but like we ended up finding that like, oh, there's something kind of beautiful about nihilistic thoughts, because they break down your blame machine, and suddenly you're just like, oh, if nothing matters, then
what does matter?
I should be nice,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't punch people, but yeah, I don't want to talk about my mental illness. I'm going to leave it at that.
I'll try to keep this short, but I do think that one of the weirdest things about this movie is, like, I was writing this movie and I was like, I think the main character probably should have like undiagnosed ADHD. I think it just makes sense. So I started doing research because I wanted to do it right, you know? And then, like, you know, at 4 a.m, I'm like crying in my bed and like, I think I have undiagnosed ADHD. And it's funny, but I think you know, this was Army Man. I didn't know that, you know, and it's there, you know. And with this movie, it's wild, you know, because I think at one point someone asked, why is suicide in both of these films, and why are these, like, it's so fun, it's so, you know, playful. Why are we putting these things in? And like, I'm only realizing it now that I have been diagnosed and with therapy, you know, gone to a psychiatrist and like that. I'm in a much better place now. I'm a much happier human being.
Woo!
You know, it's like, come on, mental health is important. And put a label on the thing that's been haunting you your whole life. And now there's so many studies on ADHD that are kind of mind blowing. And you know, one of the big things is, you know, if you have ADHD undiagnosed, you have a 16. Your lifespan is cut down by 16 years on average, and that's because of suicide. It's because of risky behavior. And so I'm realizing, I was like, oh, this whole time, these really dark thoughts and this really deep depression that you saw in Swiss Army Man and that you see in the character of Joy, I'm realizing now, I was like, oh, I can put a name on that now. This is not a scary thing anymore. It's like the first step towards, you know, basically building out a version of myself that doesn't have to be afraid of those thoughts. So I don't know. We'll see what the next movie makes me realize about myself. You know, it's like, it's kind of, I don't know. I'm so lucky that I get to work out this trauma and stuff like that on the big screen. It's like bizarre, but I'm glad.
Okay, Amanda, it is in us all. A formidable man who cares for nothing is forced to confront his self-destructive core with a violent car crash involving a sexually charged boy who epitomizes life, challenges him to face his truth. What the hell is this?
Basically, there's an incident that forces this man he's going back to what could have been his hometown, where his aunt lived, and she passed away, and so he is exploring this home that she had left to him. The car crash happens, and now he's kind of forced to explore a past he never endured, never got to encounter, and he learns truths about his mother which he didn't fully understand or know. And so he's battling with his own identity and also the identity of what he thought his mother was and who he's coming to know her to be. And is a very, very, very slow burn of a story. It takes a very long time for it to really get going, but the performance that we have from Cosmo Jarvis is great. So I commend the film for that. If you're someone who can sit through slow burns, I'd probably encourage you to check it out, because I think it does have that humanity component that we can connect with, but I did not find it to be as empowering as I think it could have been.
And your score for It Is In Us All?
$5.
All right.
The next one is Spin Me Round. You spin me
right round, baby, right round. No lie, I sang it to myself in the freaking theater.
When the manager of an Italian restaurant chain wins the opportunity to attend the franchise's educational immersion program in Italy, this must be Olive Garden, what she thought would be a romantic getaway devolves into chaos and catastrophe. It has Alison Brie and Aubrey Plaza. Please tell me more.
It is totally a knockoff of Olive Garden, by the way.
Is it really?
100%.
It's amazing.
100%. This is a hard one because I love Alison Brie and Aubrey Plaza. Aubrey Plaza is barely in the movie. She's maybe 15 minutes of
That's
screen time.
already taken like 3 points off the score.
It really did, because there's a moment where she isn't in the movie and then she never comes back. And it's...
Oh, no.
Isn't it kind of sad? Well, her character, it's explained. It's not like she dies
I know, but
tragically.
it's still sad when you're just like, oh,
It is.
goodbye.
And I'm not saying that to spoil something. I'm just saying that because it legitimately affected my enjoyment of the movie. Because she was great every time she was on screen, and then that character kind of goes away, and I'm like, I don't know what this movie is trying to do anymore. And I really didn't. Alison Brie is a manager who qualifies for this fantastic opportunity to go to Italy, and she's in this ridiculous course when she gets there where it's like they don't even want her to enjoy Italy. It's just to say that they did this thing, and then they're basically doing all these classes that kind of suck. And so she finally breaks away because the owner of this restaurant chain takes a liking to her, and then she starts seeing that other people are kind of disappearing. So is there more to this situation that she knows? What is going on? And Aubrey Plaza plays the assistant to the owner. And it's really just her kind of opening up and exploring her own inhibitions and kind of challenging herself. And then there's a lot of really interesting character moments, especially between her and Aubrey Plaza. And Molly Shannon's here, by the way, also as just one of the weird people that are there. But then at about the halfway point, Aubrey Plaza's character, like I said, leaves. And then it feels like the movie completely doesn't know what story it wants to tell anymore. It's very much, it becomes about what is going on with, all these women at this retreat and the owner, and what kind of guy is he? And is he kind of duplicitous, or is he just a pervy guy? Like, what kind of guy is he? But then the movie just becomes something that doesn't make any sense in terms of, I feel like we're not going anywhere interesting for a long period of time. So I was really into the movie, and then it got to about the halfway point, and I'm just like, you kind of lost me a little bit. And a big portion of that, or big reason for that, is Aubrey Plaza is no longer in it, and she really kind of kept things engaging. And I think other than Alison Brie, the other characters aren't as interesting, and that kind of hinders your enjoyment a little bit.
That did not spin you right round, baby, right round.
Wow. No, it did not.
What is the score that you're giving Spin Me Round?
I give it 550. I enjoyed the film overall. It's just, I really was kind of in love with it for the first half, and then
that's a bummer.
Just liked it by the end. So it's very average.
Well, moving on to one that you did love.
I sure did. Yeah, I really did.
Bodies. So many bodies. When a group of rich 20-somethings plan a hurricane party at a remote family mansion, a party game turns deadly in this fresh and funny look at backstabbing, fake friends, and one party gone very, very wrong. The cast is amazing in this. Please tell me all about Bodies. For anyone who hasn't read the review on thehollywoodoutsider.com.
Yeah, it's got Amanda Stenberg, who The Hate You Give. Loved her in that. And obviously Hunger
Tremendous.
Games. But Maria Baklova from Borat, the sequel. Pete Davidson is in this movie. He actually is funny. I will admit that Pete Davidson actually plays something other than just Pete Davidson, even though the character's kind of a little bit like Pete Davidson. But
that's what makes it funny.
Yeah, I mean, this is very similar to Pretty Problems. This is a story structure that we've seen done 1,000 times. Oh, a party goes wrong, people die. Oh my God. Well, yeah, but it's kind of cool. I mean, it's funny. It's very much taking the piss out of Gen Z and millennials. I mean, there's a lot of dealing with gender and identity politics and making fun of, not necessarily making fun of those things, but making fun of how some people handle those things.
Making light of it?
Yeah, kind of making light of how people can exaggerate many of those things and kind of take it too far in a lot of situations. And so what happens is characters start dying. They're playing a game called Bodies, 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 which is, if you ever play the game Body, Body, basically hand out cards or way to designate who a killer is, turn the lights out, and the person that is the killer goes and touches or illustrates to the other person that they are dead. Lights come back on. People are supposed to try to determine who the killer is. Well, in this circumstance, people actually die because I don't want to say anything about why, but so they're trying to figure out who the real killer is. And it's all happening while they're having a party during a frickin' hurricane, which feels the most Gen Z / millennial thing ever, because it feels like something that they
It is, 100%.
Yeah. So they can't call for help and anything else. And they also need to find out who is killing their friends. And it is one of their friends that is killing them. So it's, and also Lee Pace is there as the boyfriend for one of them, but he's ridiculously older than them. If you don't know Lee Pace, he's been in a ton of content. Go look him up. But he's very Matthew McConaughey in the movie. Like, he's shirtless a lot. He's very cool. He's obviously too old to be hanging out with these kids, but he is just having the time of his life, and he is a lot of fun. Everybody in the cast is having a lot of fun. Maria Baklova is basically the outsider because she's the girlfriend of Malin Stenberg, who is kind of a recovering addict, and her friends didn't even know she was going to show up at this party. And so Maria Baklova is there, and she's not really wanted there. And, so she's very much an outsider. She's kind of our eyes into this collection of friends as people start dying. And she's starting to wonder, like, who the hell is really the killer here? And it goes bonkers. It's funny. It's bloody. It's entertaining. And it feels like it's something fresh. By the time you get to the end, it's like, oh, okay. Now I see who and what is going on here. And it's entertaining. It's just interesting and very, very, very funny. Very funny.
Awesome. What do you give Bodies, Bodies, Bodies for a score?
I give it $8. It's an A24 film too, so you will see it in theaters, I'm sure.
Heck yeah.
It's worth it. It's definitely worth it. Oh my God. All right. Last movie is already in theaters. Of course, this is the completing Amanda's handful of movies. It's directed by Ty West. In 1979, a group of young filmmakers set out to make an adult film in rural Texas. But when their reclusive elderly hosts catch them in the act, the cast find themselves fighting for their lives. The movie's called X. Stars Mia Goth, Jenna Ortega, one of your favorites,
Heck yeah.
Martin Henderson, Brittany Snow, Owen Campbell, Stephen Uri, and of course, Kid Cudi. So, Scott Mescudi, sorry. So what did you think of X?
I really enjoyed it. This is one of the few films that, so when A24 started to become prominent, I feel like this is kind of where they were. They were more straightforward. They had obviously some undertones and some additional conversations they were trying to have with you through their movies, but they weren't always so bizarre and weird and out there. And as we've progressed through A24's film catalog, it's gotten very bizarre and out there. And for some people, it's like it goes over their head, quote unquote, or they're like, this is just too much work for me to process, like how you got from point A to point B. But this is very straightforward in terms of a slasher horror. And it was fun. The kills were gory and just wild. I really enjoyed them. Mia Goth puts on a wonderful performance. So does Brittany Snow. I think her Southern belle is beyond perfect, especially for a Floridian, a woman who's derived from Florida. The way she says, "Bless your heart."
Oh man, that was messed up. I was like, oh, I felt that. Oh, I felt that.
Yeah, you felt that in your core. We all know, you should know what "bless your heart" means, and it does not mean something nice. But I really enjoyed it. I liked the way that it went through, and I really enjoyed that there was this subtle conversation that I felt like it was having with me about beauty expectations, and very topical for the 70s, but it's still relevant for us today, the obsession with being young and being beautiful and what that means, being desired. So combining that with these younger individuals who are lustful for sex and see it in a very different light, comprised with Jenna Ortega's very naive but curious younger self, makes for an enjoyable film.
All right, so $10 full price admission, final movie. What do you give X?
I gave it $8.50.
Ah, you loved it, huh?
I did really enjoy it. What did you think of it now that you've been able to check it out?
Yeah, I saw it after you. I gave it $6.50. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it as much as you did. And there were times where I thought Mia Goth and Jenna Ortega were the same person. I'm like, is she playing two roles?
Oh my God.
Like, seriously, I did.
Funny.
I'm like, is that why she has eyeshadow? Because they're trying to differentiate her or something?
That's really funny.
She looks very similar to her. And there's a fun fact about the casting, but I don't want to ruin it.
No.
Do you know what I'm
don't say
talking about?
anything. I do. Yeah.
Google.
They announced it.
Once you've seen the movie, Google Mia Goth and the movie X. And I think you'll be fascinated what you learn about the movie. It's a fun fact, but I think you should wait until after you see it to really Google it.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. And Ty West is a fun director, for sure.
A lot of people are happy to see that man producing some horror flicks again.
Oh man, he's just a well-respected director, for sure. So, all right. So now on to our South by Southwest Awards. We'll be quick with these because we've already talked for near 3 hours, for crying out loud. But what was the most unique film you saw? I think we can probably agree with this, but maybe I'm wrong.
For sure. Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Batshit crazy. Everything you've ever thought about putting in a movie is in this movie. The Daniels are fantastic directors who deserve to be, I don't know, doing everything. Just tighten it up a little bit. You're going to make some perfect movies. I can't wait to see.
Mm-hmm.
They did Swiss Army Man. If you don't know who they are,
they're just very creative and inventive and think of the most obscure things, but make us laugh while doing it.
You can make me laugh at butt plugs, man, and that is hard to do because I just don't like pervy humor, but I was all in. I was all in. All right, best new director or new to you director?
I went with Brendan Muldowney, who did The Cellar. He's not technically new to directing or anything, but he hasn't had any big hits yet, and The Cellar is certainly going to, I think, put him more so on the map. I look forward to his horror films.
Yep. I put Chloe Okuno from Watcher. I keep wanting to say The Watcher, but it's just Watcher. She really built a lot of atmosphere. And I thought it was kind of interesting how she shot the film to where I could understand that Watcher meant Megan Moreau's character or meant a character watching her character. So, I mean, it was just really clever how it was shot in terms of it gave you two different perspectives in many ways. Best overall performance, Amanda.
This one was a little bit more tough for me, but I think I'm going to go with Michelle Yeoh because I didn't expect her performance to wow me as much. Jenna Ortega was kind of the other one I was contemplating, but I went into it.
You might be in love with her. You might be a little in love with her.
I am. Yeah. I
because her role is like not that much. She's not even in that movie that much.
It's not. But she just like every time she's on screen, I'm immediately immersed, and I believe when she's terrified, I feel terrified. When she's ready to run, I'm like, girl, I'm ready to run with you. She just knows how to get into those deep, dramatic roles really well. But I went with Michelle Yeoh. Okay.
Now.
What's yours? You're not going to tell me yours?
Yeah, I was going to keep it a secret and say you don't get to know. No, Rita Moreno.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I can't believe that you convinced me a 90-year-old just tiny little thing is intimidating as hell. But I understood. Keith David's in the movie. Big dude. You know, he's been on a ton of stuff. And Keith David is an imposing guy. I'm Keith David. You know, you hear him talking, you're like, he's got the voice. He's height. He's big. But Rita Moreno kind of scares him. And I feel it works. And that's hard to do. So I give her kudos for that. So what's the film you heard get the most buzz that you didn't get to see?
Mine was The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. We were going to potentially try to stand in line to see this Nick Cage film, but not with that weather. No, Austin. No, sir.
Plus the line was like 12 blocks long or something. I mean,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Insane. But many people raved about that movie. raved about. I think it's still
I
at 100%.
expected that though.
Yeah, but
like I don't even trust it because I knew that there was going to be so many critics going into it just because it's Nick Cage being the wildest Nick Cage ever, like the Nick Cageiest Nick Cage thing, that I knew they were going to be like, this is such a great movie, that I feel like I just can't trust them.
Okay, fair enough.
That's how I feel.
But you have to admit, they did have on site, they had people wearing these giant Nick Cage heads that were just amazing. Amazing.
They had a face-off one. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was very cool. Very cool. Mine would be The Cow, which is the movie I literally tried to get into 3 different times and could never get into. I mean, it was amazing to me. I'm like, Winona Ryder apparently has become a mega star and I didn't know it. But it's about upon arriving at a remote cabin in the Redwoods, Kath and her boyfriend find a mysterious younger couple already there. The rental has apparently been double booked. With nowhere else to go, they decide to share the cabin with these strangers until the next morning. Then her boyfriend disappears with the young woman, and Kath becomes obsessed in finding an explanation for their sudden breakup. But the truth is far stranger than she could have imagined. And Winona Ryder is in it. It apparently it must be fantastic because everybody in the whole damn festival wanted to see it and wanted to keep me from seeing it. So The Cow. Now, favorite all-around film.
I think we're in agreement here again. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Dear God, yes. Yep. 100%. 100%. I can't say enough about seeing this movie in a theater too. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
I think it's starting small in smaller markets and it'll expand April 1st or April 8th, something like that. Go see this in a theater, and I pray 1,000 people are in that theater with you, and you feel safe and protected and all that jive, because it is a wonderful reminder of what movies can do to kind of challenge your own creativity, your own imagination, and really just goes for it, man. It just swings for the fences and most of the time hits it, just hits it out of the park.
Yep, absolutely.
And I can't stress it enough. There's also once that thing comes together and you get the overall story, it's a really beautiful story.
It is. It's a very emotional and deep topic that they're trying to get through to you without feeling heavy.
Yeah. Well, now we have arrived to the end of the show. This is a long podcast, and I'm sorry if you don't like that, but you're at the end. If you made it this far, you must have enjoyed something. I think that we had a wonderful time. It was great to be live back in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest. Again, SXSW.com. Any closing thoughts on the experience, the festival, anything else?
I just want to express my gratitude to the volunteers and all of the staff who put all of this together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Truly, because, I mean, especially after 3 years, you have no idea how difficult people are going to be, how cumbersome some of the processes had to be, and they always pulled it together. I didn't have any experiences where I was like, this feels like it's disorganized or a mess. Like, that never happened. And so I give such credit to the entire leadership team of the South by Southwest event in its entirety, not just the film festival, but especially to Janet Pearson and all of her team and the volunteers for the film festival section. It was great. Absolutely amazing. They did wonderful work as always. I had a couple thoughts. One, the Alamo is done. It's closed. One of the Alamos there on site at the Alamo Draft House. One of the ones that we've gone to. I've gone to for years. This is my 7th live South by. I believe 7th or 8th. I did, and 2 virtuals. So 8th or 9th I'm at. 9th or 10th. I don't know. I've been going for a long time. You don't even know how to do math. I don't know how to do math. But that theater has always been it's very well located in terms of where everything is. And it was also just a beautiful experience. So that's very sad that theater is apparently taken down by COVID, the way I understand it. So that was a little bit disappointing. But I also, on a positive note, learned how to do, what is it called? Lime? Yes, we lime scootered. Amanda forced me to do lime scooter. And I ended up doing this quite frequently. And it was quite the time saver. Because in Austin, transportation is hard to come by sometimes. Even though they provide shuttles,
they're not all, I mean, I don't think they had as many shuttles as they have had previously because I feel like it was a lot faster before. It's a minor quibble, but I got to use Lime, and so I'm just zipping all over, basically like Marty McFly, all over this damn town. And boy, it got you moving. It got you where you need to be.
It was
fast.
fun.
It was a lot of fun. So I did that several times, and it actually saved my bacon quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite a few. I'm like, I'm never gonna make it. Wait a minute. There's a Lime right there. I can just pick one of those bad boys up, spend $5, and I will be there on time.
We went like across town in Austin to make one of our screenings.
Mm-hmm.
We really... which movie was that? I don't even remember which movie it was. I know it was at the Alamo.
I think it was Sissy. It was the first night.
It was Sissy. It was Sissy. You're right. Because we had a struggle back to back.
Yeah, and it was cold. Like, it was very cold.
It was freezing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we literally had to stop to warm up our hands. It was so cold.
Oh, that the first night, the shuttles were kind of, you could tell they hadn't been using them for 2 years, right? So there was some readjusting that they had to do, obviously with schedules and whatnot. So we were on the bus and we were going the wrong way. So we got off the bus and I ran to this is for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I ran to the screening. Amanda just hopped on this Lime thing and got there before me. And I was like, what the hell? I ran the whole way. I mean, I was running like, it was insane. It was like planes, trains, and automobiles. I was just desperate to get there. I don't want to miss this one. I really want to see this one. And she beat me with this damn Lime thing. So I highly recommend them if you've never taken one.
They're just a lot of fun to just like zoom around on.
Very much. Very much. And again, if you've never been, please go to South by. I really recommend. It's the best film festival I've ever been to, and we've been to all of them. So that is the one that I highly recommend everybody gives a shot to if you are a fan of film. And we have talked about a lot of movies, so there's a lot for you to look for. Now I hope you have a few things to keep an eye out for. Keep in mind, everyone, that many of these films do not have a release date. Some are out, but many of them aren't yet. So check IMDb for updates, and you'll find the dates and times there. Thanks again for listening. Be sure to subscribe. Tell your friends about The Hollywood Outsider, and head over to thehollywoodoutsiders.com if you haven't been to the site. There's a lot of reviews for some of the stuff we've talked about here. And remember, the next time you head to a theater, buy popcorn.
I'm already missing that popcorn we had at the Alamo.
Oh my God. Parmesan garlic is one.
I know you're daydreaming.